Hello again. Come on in. Hello, hello, hello. I'm waiting for my night owls, my for real night owls, to show up. Welcome. Come on in. Bless the Lord. Completely different subject matter. This is a rare occurrence for y'all to get me twice in one day. It's a wonder if you get me twice in a week. I got off because I had to take a call earlier. Hello, One Africa. Hello, Kevin. Hello, those of you watching. Please share. Now I have more of a provocative topic, and I'm still not going to be before you long. Hey, Mikey. But yeah, my topic is Beyonce, which is ironic, seeing as I was like, can we stop talking about Beyonce? Okay. And I was semi-provocative on purpose with the title, because, good morning, because I do want to talk about it, but I want to talk about things that pertain to it. It's not going to be your average conversation. I can assure you of that. For the record, when I used to teach at a ministerial institute a couple years ago, I actually did that for One of Africa, sorry. When I taught in 2017, 2018, I taught 3 different semesters. First was Judging the Prophetic. Actually, no, it's Prophetics 101, based on my book, Judging the Prophetic. And the second semester was Dreams, Visions, Bible Symbols. And then the third semester, and these are 8-week semesters, I wrote the curriculum for the courses. The third semester was Rulers of the Age, Spirits of the Age, something like that. And so I think it was for that last class where I actually, and welcome as you guys are coming on, please share this. Hello Terrence, hello Shy Asia. I'm so sorry if I butchered your name. Please correct me. Hey Daniel, I actually asked my students, I think it was like extra credit. I gave like for real homework, y'all. But I was like, go back to whatever Grammy performance it was where Beyonce had all the gold on and tell me the different goddesses you see represented in her performance. Because I think that was probably when she started taking a really big turn as far as the imagery she selected and chose to portray, as far as specifically not just being sensual, but being a goddess, putting on the image of the mother goddess. And some of them were Oshun, Ogun, Kali. Because if you go back, and I forget which year that performance was, maybe somebody knows and can put it in the comments or can Google it real quick. But again, it's the one where she's wearing all gold throughout the whole time. And then when she accepted her award, she was wearing the veil like the Virgin Mary. The Madonna, aka the Virgin Mary, was one of those. And for those of you who don't know, I'm not bashing Catholicism as a whole, although my father, he grew up Catholic and was delivered from that, thank God. But I'm not bashing it, but there are spirits that are invoked behind a lot of those things that they do. And so the Virgin Mary, of course, was not bad. And by the way, she is not still a virgin. She had like 5 kids, outside of Jesus. She had other kids. The Bible says that she had, other children, and they came to see Jesus. Hey, Northern Dunbar. Hey, Evelyn. Hey, Terrence. But she was portraying, I should say, the spirit behind Virgin Mary worship or Marian worship or Mariology is the whore of Babylon, the spirit of Babylon, aka the Queen of Heaven. The Queen of Heaven. So while the Catholic artists and sculpturists, if you will, may have had biblical references for the stars on her crown, which if you go to, Revelation 11, you can see, hey Ashanti, you can see the imagery of the woman with the stars and all that. Even though that was not the Virgin Mary, you still see this image of a woman giving birth and being attacked in that process, which is parallel to the story of Mary and Joseph and the birth of Jesus and all that. Grace and peace to you as well. But yeah, she had a lot of those. I really think that was like the massive turn in the imagery she chose to portray, and you could tell by the crown. And I've seen a lot of beautiful wedding pictures from different individuals, very because now I love weddings, by the way, y'all. I've been obsessed with weddings since I was a 10-year-old tomboy, and am a former wedding blogger, and you may see me going down that path again real soon. Stay tuned. But I've seen a lot of very fabulous, gorgeous. Hey Shelda, hey Dr. Gregory, hey everyone. Please share this as you come on, and drop in the comments where you're watching from. I forgot to say that earlier. You see the headdress that is very similar, you know, with all the, this looks like moose ears. Just look like the stars and like the aura, if you will, around the head that you would see in a lot of frescoes, a lot of paintings, even sculptures and different things like that of the Virgin Mary, the different depictions of her with the flowers a lot of times. So the flowers and the stars, you know, and flowers represent grace and things like that. And hi Brittany and whatever else. You know, just being anointed and chosen of God. And of course the Catholics have what seems like a minor linguistic difference. Hey Raja, they say mother of God versus mother of Jesus. Even though Jesus is God, Mary is not the mother of God, because God does not have a mother. But Jesus, Emmanuel, does indeed have a mother, okay? The Word made flesh has a human mother because he needed that portal to legally come through in this spiritual realm, to be here and exist here, unlike the Nephilim, which is another subject, who were here and are here illegally, spiritually illegally. Which is why they're demon spirits. Different topic, different day. But Jesus came legally. But yeah, so you see the imagery in that particular headdress of the mother goddess, if you will, as far as goddess worship is concerned, which has taken on the form of Marian worship, Mariology, worship of the Virgin Mary, is interesting. I was reading a novel years ago. I won't say the name of it, but I was reading a novel, and it deals, okay, so I'm Celtic. I'm like almost 40% Celtic, and about 27 of that is Irish. And the Celts, you know, they believed in a triple goddess. Now theirs was like an amalgamation as far as the god and the goddess, but they believed in a triple goddess, which in a lot of ways is a demonic version of the Trinity, because they have the crone or the old woman or the hag, who represents, you know, gray hair represents wisdom. It speaks to, you know, aka the wise woman, which would be the mockery of the Holy Spirit. Then you have the mother goddess, who is often portrayed pregnant, but is the mockery or the feminine, if you will, version of the father. And then you have the virgin, who of course is the mockery of Christ, you know. And so in that way, what's fascinating is that at the end of the novel, it's set around the time of King Arthur. And at the end of the novel, you know, there's this back and forth between Christianity and paganism in Britain. And side note, this is why I hate a lot of Arthurian literature. Like, I hate and abhor Thomas Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur. I do not like The Once and Future King by, who's it? Somebody white, T.H. White, somebody white, okay, not like skin, I mean, I'm sure they were white, but like the last name is white. The Once and Future King, which is supposed to be a classic, but I just did not enjoy it because they've so sanitized. I believe the musical Camelot did that as well. They've so sanitized and Christianized this picture of King Arthur. It's like, y'all know Arthur was a pagan. Christianity might have come to the island and been, you know, kicking up its heels around that time, but still very much so a pagan land, you know, wrestling with the grassroots religion of the people, if you will. But so you see this image of the goddess in throughout this novel, and at the end it says, you know, the woman who's narrating but is also a character is like, you know, it's taken on a different form. The worship of the mother goddess or the triple goddess has taken on a different form, and which speaks again to the nature of the Celtic religion, which is where Wicca is derived from. It's derived from the Druid religion of the Celts, of the Irish, and so forth. And all the mother goddesses are sort of an amalgamation, and so the new face on the mother goddess is the Virgin Mary. Even though they don't explicitly say that in the end of the novel and the movie, you can see that. And so it's like, I knew it! You know, for me, like, I love stuff like that. Not I don't love idolatry, hear me, but I love connecting the dots. You know, like, it between historical fiction and the BBC productions and my Bible, not in that order, and just good old-fashioned research and hunches. Like, I was able to trace the worship of my Irish ancestors, of my Celtic ancestors, back to the worship of the Canaanites, because it's the same spirit. It's the same principality. It's Baal and Asherah. It's Baal in Babylon. It's the Queen of Heaven mentioned in Jeremiah chapter 7, in Jeremiah chapter 44. They made cakes. That's what chapter 44 says. They made cakes. They baked cakes to the Queen of Heaven. And actually, if you read Thomas Cahill's book, How the Irish Saved Civilization, they actually talk about finding bog people who were human sacrifices. So yes, the Celts did practice human sacrifice. Okay, it wasn't just their cousins, the Vikings. The bog people are so well preserved, you can literally look into their innards, if you will, perform an autopsy all these ages later and see what they ate before they were ritually sacrificed. And they found cakes that were the ingredients specifically made to the worship, the ceremonial worship of their mother goddess. Y'all, like, so I love connecting all the little dots. But going back to the depiction of Beyonce at that Grammy performance, whatever year it was, 2016, 17, I don't know, where she's wearing all the gold. And again, welcome as you guys are coming on. Frederick, James, Letitia, everyone, Aisha, Aunt Joe, Conrad, Donna, Tyler, Precious. Y'all are awesome. Please share this. Oh, I moved the comments away. They are where red velvet cake come from. I'm so confused, but now I'm hungry because Dr. Gregory mentioned red velvet cake, of which I have none. Thank you. But so she depicts the mother goddess, aka in the form of the Virgin Mary in Mariology, with the headdress, with the gold neckwear. And this is no, let's use wisdom, people. Let's not say that a piece of jewelry, unless it has a demonic symbol or something, is demonic. But this, if you guys watch Black Panther, you see that the Dora Milaje, what do they call it? The bodyguards of the King of Wakanda, they have, like, I don't know what you call them, like the neck issue connecting. Okay, there we go. The goddess Oshun and Ogun is a lot of times portrayed in yellow, aka gold, wearing that neck. It's not really a neck ring, it's like a stacked neck ring that sort of flares out, like your neck naturally flares out. So the fact that she was in yellow, aka gold, is another nod to the goddesses Oshun and Ogun and the Orishas, you know, the gods and Obia, the African religions and things like that. And let me just say, before we go any further, if all African nature is to you is paganism, you have been influenced, my dears, by colonialism, because Christianity was in Africa before it ever got to the Americas. Christianity was in Africa before it ever got to certain other places. And let me be clear, because a lot of people will say, well, Christianity's only been around for 2,000 years. That's true. Christianity. But how long has Judaism been around? Because you have to remember that Philip didn't preach the word in general to the Ethiopian eunuch, which is Sheba, which is the Cushites, who are descended from Cush, who is the grandson of Noah, okay, who was the father of Nimrod. He was reading the scroll of Isaiah on the road when Philip the evangelist found him in Acts 8. So he upgraded his knowledge, but he didn't introduce him to God. Okay? They pulled kind of like a Priscilla and Aquila, with Apollos on him. And then the Lord raptured him to, Azotus or wherever, Gaza. No, he was on the road to Gaza and it was raptured to Azotus. Yeah. So you have to understand that Christianity was introduced to Ethiopia, aka Sheba, back then, because he would have taken it back to Queen Candace, the Ethiopian queen. They had female monarchs. And then you have to go back to the days of Solomon, because who heard tell of Solomon's greatness and wisdom and came all the way from Africa to behold this great wisdom and wealth for herself? The Queen of Sheba, aka Ethiopia, aka Cush. Okay, and then, where did Jesus go? Where did little baby Jesus go? My God, sisters out here. Where did baby Jesus go when or toddler Jesus, if you will, when Herod was trying to kill him? His parents took him to Egypt. Where did the prophets go? When they were escaping, I believe Jeremiah went with people to Egypt. So there was a constant ongoing relationship. And again, if you really, really, really want to take it back, again, that's why I mentioned Ethiopia is Sheba, which was the Cushites, which were from Cush, who was the grandson of Noah. So even if they were early adopters of paganism post-flood, they knew the God of Noah. Okay, Noah was a prophet. They knew the God of Adam, Abel, Enoch, Methuselah, and Noah. They knew of him. They might have turned their backs from him sooner or later, and we don't really know when that was. We do know, if you do your research and you study or read my blog, that the story of the death of Nimrod has been immortalized in Egyptian mythology in the death of Osiris, who is supposed to be Nimrod, of Isis, who is supposed to be Semiramis, aka Nimrod's wife / mother, which is gross, and her son, who was Tammuz, aka Damuz, depending on which version you're looking at, and represents the spirit of Antichrist, but is Horus in Egyptian mythology. And Set represents Shem, who, according to Jewish understanding, Jewish tradition, actually slew Nimrod when he said that he was a god. He was possessed with the spirit of Baal, married to / the son of a woman who was possessed with the spirit of Babylon, aka the Queen of Heaven. Babel meaning gate of the gods, not confusion. We derive the word Babbel from what happened at Babel, but Babel means gate of the gods, or gate of God. Okay? Just 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So, anywho, all of that. So you have to understand that the worship of Jehovah goes back to Eden. Adam was a prophet. Abel was a prophet. Enoch was a prophet. Methuselah probably had some prophetic tendencies. Hey, Apostle Lionel. Hey, Josh. Noah was a prophet. Okay? So whatever originally infiltrated Africa from a spiritual standpoint was once upon a time from God, the maker of heaven and earth. Okay? The God who would be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob down the line. So to say that being black is synonymous with being pagan, to say that being black, even though they wouldn't say this, pagans wouldn't say this, that being black from a Christian standpoint is synonymous with darkness, with spiritual harlotry, with spiritual fornication. You learned that on the plantation. Because the Bible doesn't say that. Sure doesn't. And there were a lot of peoples who were defined by their pagan beliefs. And it was not, the Bible focuses on the Canaanites, you know, who were related to those who settled in Africa because they were all the sons of Ham. Canaan, who gave his name to the land of Canaan, was the last son of Ham. Cush, who is the father of Nimrod, Mizraim, who's the father of Egypt, and Put, aka Foot, P-H-U-T, was the father of Libya. I guess one of them just decided to be Middle Eastern and the rest were black. I don't know how that works, but obviously none of us were there. I'm assuming everyone looks something like this, give or take, whatever. That's just me. Once upon a time, before they started moving away, because you have, one language, one people, one tribe, basically, at Babel, Gate of the Gods, okay? And then they build this massive ziggurat, religious center, pyramid, okay? Or attempt to build that to reach heaven. And it's interesting because their cousins went and actually built the pyramids, okay? Went and built this ziggurat, aka pyramid, aka religious center, to try and reach heaven. And God came down and frustrated their work, and he divided their language, which forced the peoples to disperse, and the people were divided, right? And then the land in the days of Peleg was divided. I believe that's a reference to Pangea, aka the supercontinent breaking up. If you don't believe in Pangea's existence, it's not going to put you in heaven or hell, or keep you out either. Okay, that's just my personal take on that verse that pops up twice in Scripture, and but they took that faith with them. Hey Ryan, they took that faith with them, and then it turned into other things. But that was the faith that stemmed once upon a time from Jehovah, or maybe even included Jehovah, because we don't know the details. We don't know what Mizraim was thinking when he went to Egypt. We don't know what Put or Foot was thinking when he went to the land that would become Libya. We don't know. Cush was probably a little out there since his son was Nimrod, but still, we technically do not really know what they taught. But just knowing that Cush was the grandson of Noah, who was on the ark. His father Ham was on the ark. Okay? Maybe some of their children were conceived on the ark. I don't know. Okay? So they knew the truth of God. They knew the true God. It was not some lowercase Elohim, lowercase g, okay, God. They knew the God, the maker of heaven and earth. So if anybody tells you that African is synonymous with paganism, they're wrong. They're misinformed. Their belief has been whitewashed by colonialism or neocolonialism. They learned that on the plantation. So really, and I still have not seen Black is King. Frankly, I don't know if I will, because I don't know if I will, okay? And if I watch it, what I'll probably do is just watch it, and then watch it with this, with notes, so I can take notes. Okay, that's this, and this is that, and that is, you know what I mean? So that's just me. You do what the Lord bids you to do. But yeah, that's if I watch it, and we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll turn it on and be like, well, the devil, turn it off. I don't know, okay? But for me, I like to delve into things and dissect things so I can come back and teach you guys so y'all don't have to do it if you don't want to, and if the Lord is not leading you, because everyone does not have the same leash. Everyone does not have the same steadfastness of faith. Everyone does not have the same roots. You're not going to deceive me in the name of Jesus with no false nothing. The devil is a liar and a whole liar and the father of lies. But everyone is not as rooted and grounded in their faith as I am. Everyone is not as rooted and grounded in their faith as you may be. You know what I mean? Somebody may just, especially in this environment of white supremacy and systemic racism just being continually uncovered, not increasing, but just uncovered and exposed. It has been my concern for years now, not because of the things that have been continually swept under the rug in the American church, in the Western church, in churches that are predominantly white, in churches that are multi-ethnic but not multicultural, where the leadership of the church is still white, even though like where the leadership of the church does not reflect what the congregation looks like, ethnically speaking, culturally speaking, all that makes a difference. Little nuances make a huge deal when it comes to that kind of stuff. My concern has been not just that there would be an exodus from massive churches like a Lakewood or a Gateway or anything like that, to a smaller, lesser known black congregation, but that this is why, part of the reason why they're leaving in droves for the occult, why they are leaving in droves for the Nation of Islam, because BEYONCÉ's African spirituality gives you a sense of dignity in your blackness, in your black girl magic, in your black boy joy. The Nation of Islam gives you a sense of dignity and pride, not in an evil sense, in a I'm proud of who God made me to be sense, even though it is not the same God. Jesus ain't coming back for me in a spaceship, okay? The will and the wheel might have been a spaceship, but Jesus ain't coming back in that, okay? So, they provide a dignity that has not been articulated intentionally, and sometimes ignorantly, but historically has not been articulated intentionally, because the people who have tried to claim the Bible, who are fairer in skin, do not want you to understand that the Bible is chocked full of leading and extras, leading characters and extras, if you will, who are people of color. Because how do you have a book set in the Middle East and not have a book full of people of color? And the way some of y'all started manifesting when I asked y'all about a month ago, name somebody in the Bible who's not white, lets you know that there's a stronghold. And this to me is not a pass to go be a vigilante and knock down statues of white Jesus. I don't care what your Jesus looks like, because I don't pray to your statue, and you shouldn't either. I don't care if you have a statue, because art is made in the eye of the beholder. So I expect a Swedish, a Flemish artist, a British artist to make a white Jesus. I expect an Asian, a Chinese, a Taiwanese, a Japanese artist to make an Asian looking Jesus. I expect a African or an Caribbean or someone in the African diaspora to make a Jesus that looks like Jesus is not black. And I know that just pissed some of y'all off. He's not black. He looked black. But just because you look a certain thing doesn't mean you are a certain thing. Just because you blend, I blend in with a lot. I blend in. I've been mistaken for being Ethiopian. I've been mistaken for being Egyptian. I have been, when my hair is straight, I've been mistaken for being Indian, aka South Asian. I've been mistaken for being Puerto Rican, Dominican, which is close because I am a quarter Haitian. I've been mistaken for a lot of things that I am not. Okay. My father, even more so, I call my dad camouflage, okay? Because if you think I look like a whole lot of things, wait till you see my dad. Jasmine, you're on here, you know what my daddy looks like. So, but yeah, like I expect an artist to depict Jesus in the way that they relate to, because Jesus speaks to you in your own language. You know, Apostle Paul talked about being all things to all people. That's not to say that he was in flesh, he wasn't Swedish, he wasn't Asian, unless you consider the fact that Asians came from the line of Shem, as did the Semites. You know what I mean? He wasn't Native American, he wasn't Mexican, he wasn't from Nubia. Okay? He was a Jewish man, a Hebrew from the Middle East. Okay? And so, but that's fine. But then you have Salvatore Dali, who depicts Jesus hanging on, a 3-dimensional cross. Okay, we know Jesus wasn't on like a cubic cross, okay? But that was his depiction. It wasn't a sacrilege, from him anyway. It was more so a prophetic illustration, because creatives are prophetic, whether they know it or not. It is a prophetic illustration that Jesus exceeds dimensions, that Jesus exceeds time and space, that Jesus exceeds matter. In the words of Dr. Rennie McLean, matter doesn't matter. Jesus exceeds time. God is the father of time. He created time. Dr. Rennie McLean would say eternity is the father. What does he say? Eternity invades time, if you will. But time is like a switchboard from like the 40s or before, where you plug the little things in. It's like, okay, I want you here. I want you in 2020. I want you born in 1985, November 14th. So I'm going to plug DesireeMMondesir, blank space for my last name, future last name, I'm going to plug her in here, because I want her here. But God doesn't live here. He lives outside of the switchboard. He created the switchboard for us. He created the times and the seasons for us. This is a whole other teaching. It has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about. But so I don't have an issue with someone's depiction of Jesus, as long as it's not a woman, as long as it's not a lesbian. Like, I don't care what your Jesus looks like, because I know the Jesus I talk to. Okay? And if he shows up in the flesh, like he did all the time in the Old Testament, let us come down and see what they've built. Let me go with 2 of my boys to Abraham's tent. I don't know what he looked like, because the Bible didn't tell us. He probably looked Middle Eastern, obviously, because you don't want a pale-faced man showing up in the Middle East before pale-faced people exist. That would look odd. That would raise a couple flags, But there are a lot of depictions of God coming down. They call it a theophany, a picture of a pre-incarnate Christ, if you will, in the earth. And thanks to you guys as you're coming on here. And so I don't care what your Jesus looks like, because I don't pray to your statue. I don't pray to any statue. I don't pray to an image. I don't pray to a fresca. I don't pray to a painting or a sculpture. Okay? They did the best they could with their artistic freedom, and I believe in artistic freedom. I just don't believe in heresy. Bless the Lord. So as long as you know what the actual Jesus looked like according to Scripture, I don't care. Because there's still things in the Bible we can't even... Like the Jesus that walked the earth, the Word made flesh, in John 1:14, in the Gospels, there are people who believe, and I have mixed feelings about this. I'm inclined to disagree, but there are people who believe the commander of the host that showed up to Joshua was Jesus. Okay, he would have had a particular appearance when he showed up to Joshua. There are people who believe what Ezekiel saw the angel of the Lord, and a lot of times there's a lot of debate over that phrase, angel of the Lord. Was it the Lord himself, or was it the angel of the Lord? We don't know. It probably depends on the scenario. But the angel that showed up to Ezekiel, when that had one foot on one side of the river and one foot on the other side of the river, looked a whole lot like what John saw in the book of Revelation. But that don't look nothing like what walked the earth. So even Jesus has different appearances, okay? Depending on, glorified, unglorified, what is he doing? We don't know, okay? He could absolutely show up like an angel unaware and surprise you, okay? I don't know. I haven't seen him. I'm not an apostle. I have not had a vision of Jesus at this point. I'm not saying you have to be an apostle to do that. I'm just saying I haven't seen him, okay? I shall see him. I shall behold him, but I have not currently seen him, okay? And I'm okay with that, because I would probably pass myself out, just like Daniel, just be out for days, okay? And I don't know, the Lord knows that I'm borderline anemic, okay, and probably would pass out. But, anywho, let's go back to Beyonce. So we talked about her Grammy performance a few years ago, and she depicted the mother goddess in the form of the Virgin Mary. We talked about how the neck jewelry, the neck ring, and the yellow/gold represents the goddesses Oshun and Ogun. If you guys remember, like I can't really do it because I only have this much screen, but you guys remember like the hand thing, like the ooh, where she was doing with all the hands, that reminded a lot of my students of the goddess Kali. So their homework was to tell me how many, at least 3 goddesses that are depicted, and they even came up with some based on their research that I didn't even think of, okay? So there were multiple goddess demonstrations, and I think really motherhood, especially this last pregnancy, since there was so much controversy surrounding her first pregnancy, which some of y'all still probably believe she didn't give birth the first time, and who the heck cares? Because it's her child. It looks just like her and her husband, y'all, okay? Who cares? You wouldn't want someone fussing about whether or not the child is yours, if you chose to go with a surrogate for whatever reason. Who cares? Your reasons are your reasons. It's not our business unless you make it our business, okay? But she really commercialized that motherhood thing, you know what I mean? Just combining all these mother goddess depictions for that Grammy performance when she was pregnant with who is it, the twins? I think it was the twins. Whatever it was, she was pregnant, okay? So even like I mentioned the triple goddess to you guys, she had that hologram depiction of her mother Tina being in. Tina is fabulous. I don't care what y'all say. Miss Tina Knowles is fabulous, okay? She is depicted as the crone, aka the hag, aka the wise woman, due to her age and the fact that she's Beyonce's mama. Then you have Beyonce, fully ripe with child, who is depicting the mother goddess. And then you have little baby Ivy, Blue Ivy, who's depicting the Virgin, and she has those, so there are so many different depictions, and with her, there's just so much, just like I said, she commercialized her pregnancy, okay? There's so much that Beyonce does, and I know a lot of y'all will disagree, and I really don't care, and I'm not even completely decided on this, and it really doesn't matter. It makes no difference between heaven or hell. I don't know that Beyonce is a witch, because what Beyonce is a businesswoman. Whatever sells is what she is going to do. Sex sells, so she presents sensuality, okay? The new age occultic practices, whether people know what and you can see this across the board with whomever your favorite celebrities are. They don't know what they dabbling in. I see them like getting subscription kits and boxes of crystals, and every single Real Housewives of fill in the blank has some sort of cultic practitioner that they call in a tarot card reader, a palm reader, a psychic. You have Marisol's mom from Real Housewives of Miami who says, I'm a witch, you know what I mean? I think she passed away, God, help her. But you have all these different practitioners, formal, informal, dabbling, not dabbling, that show up in all these different, you know what I mean? Like, it's everywhere because it's in vogue. We're in a revival of witchcraft, which AKA, if there is a revival of something demonic, that means there is a revival of something holy happening, a real revival in the name of Jesus. And so it's popular. We didn't really know a lot of what her and Jay-Z were doing from a philanthropic standpoint until years ago when Harry Belafonte called them out for being what appeared to be selfish and not really being philanthropic and giving to the community. But after Harry Belafonte, and y'all know who he is, classic actor, older gentleman, I'm not sure if he's still around. Fabulous. He was in Carmen back in the day with Dorothy Dandridge and Diana Carroll. He called them out for not being involved in that way. And now everything is black. It's cool. It's in vogue to be black and to be, you know, the new word is allyship, to be an ally of black people, even though half the people don't understand what that means. You know what I mean? And so it's in vogue. Beyonce made a whole visual album based on her husband cheating on her and sold that mug and made money. Okay? Absolute insanity to me. But it was a business strategy. And so things can be witchy. Someone can be a little witchy and do some witchy things without being a formal witch. I'm not in Beyonce's house. I don't know. Is she promoting the spirit of witchcraft? Yes. But some of y'all favorite people do too. And here's my thing. My thing is, y'all can't pick out the witches in your pulpits. But we're supposed to listen to you talk about Beyonce? Beyonce is the obvious. Discernment is for what is not obvious. The gift of discerning of spirits is to distinguish between what is good and what is God, between what looks good and what is good, between what is God and what looks like God. We know Beyonce. I'm not saying Beyonce is evil, but what she promotes is evil. I think she has a level of knowledge of what she's promoting. But what did she say, Jasmine? I don't know what she said. I don't know if you were talking about what I said. Okay. Yeah. So it's like y'all can't pick out the witches in your own pulpits. I really don't want to hear it from some of y'all because there are a lot of agendas being promoted here. And today, the thing that really pissed me off was I don't want to see a male evangelist, a male prophetic evangelist, no names, who has issues with women and has openly stated he has issues with women, is surprised that a godly woman would be faithful. And I want to hear you call another woman a witch. I don't want to hear you call a woman a witch because you have an issue with women across the board. That's what, no, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. What I will say is if you study St. Augustine, if you study Albert of Magnus, if you study John Calvin, if you study Martin Luther, if you study all the founding fathers of our faith, okay, Catholic and Protestant alike, most of them had a hatred and or fear of women. I was trying to find the link to a podcast teaching I did last summer. It was great, just wasn't on my podcast. And I read probably like 10 quotes from our faith, people who are our faith, from theologians that we teach in seminary and Bible college and all that, and that we quote, and they hated women. They thought they belittled women. They thought women were a bastion of evil. They thought women were the tempter. they thought women were only good for childbearing, for sex and childbearing. A lot of them, if you really, I'm huge on historic novels, y'all. If you really look at a lot of people, especially if you find like a young ruler from the medieval times or something like that, who is forced to be in government, in a monarchy or something like that, when he wanted to be in a church, or maybe someone who was just pious, they viewed sex as evil. I'm not talking about fornication. I'm not talking about adultery, although they did include those. I'm talking about sex with your wife. They viewed it as evil. They viewed it as nasty, as disgusting, as foul, as sinful, but God created it. We're not Adam and Eve naked and ashamed. You hate women. You have been taught to hate women, and time out of mind, you have taught our theologians, who have historically primarily been men. Okay, and now you have women, like the woman, I forget her name, but the one who runs the Transformed Wife blog and has the book called The Transformed Wife. That woman has made marriage an idol, and she's crazy. Okay, read her stuff. Read the men in the comments under her stuff, in the way they shut down any women who disagrees. That is a woman who idolizes marriage. If you're not happy in your marriage, it's because you're not doing enough to please your husband. It's because you're idle. It's because you don't make your own clothes or garden and grow your own food. All women ministers are rebellious. Doesn't matter if your husband said you could preach. Every single one of us is rebellious and an affront to God. You hate women. You hate any woman who does not buy into your ideology. The women are usually worse than the men. I left a theology group last month on here because I could tell a lot of the men had that sort of reformed, and John Calvin hated women. Okay, so y'all remember that black dude who was always around with Donald Trump? I forget his name. Can't think of his name. The light-skinned dude with the long face, who was a preacher, a pastor who was always with Donald Trump during his campaign. I can't think of his name, y'all. Someone here knows his name. He said he wouldn't vote for Hillary, not because she has the spirit of Athaliah, not because she's a Jezebel, not because she's wicked, not because she's evil, but because she was a woman. That's the only reason. You're not. That's the reason you're pro-Trump, because Hillary is a woman. Same spirit. Okay? Same spirit as John Calvin, who had an issue with any woman in position of government in monarchy who was a woman, other than a queen, consort, or princess, daughter, something like that. Any, like Queen Elizabeth and Mary, Queen of Scots. It was because they were women. I'm not saying they were squeaky clean, okay? They wasn't all virginal, okay? But his issue was primarily because they were women. He hated women. Martin Luther, the father of the Reformation, had major issues with women, had major issues in his marriage, and these are who he learned from. I'm not saying, obviously, like, they've contributed wonderful things, all that great stuff. Awesome. I love the movie Martin Luther. Actually, it stars one of my favorite male actors, Joseph Fiennes. He's phenomenal. But the man had issues with marriage. Read about his life. Read about his marriage. Read about his family life. A lot of these men had issues. Who saw, this is a perfect example, who saw The Hunchback of Notre Dame? I watched that recently on Disney+. Love The Hunchback of Notre Dame. She's one of the non-Disney princesses that I look like with my hair. Frollo. Was it Claude Frollo? Whatever he was. The priest guy in The Hunchback of Notre Dame who raised Quasimodo. That man was crazy. He lusted after and hated Esmeralda at the same time. You don't pick up on certain things as a child. You know he's a bad man. But when you watch that thing in your 20s and 30s, you're like, the blood of Jesus. This man had a devil, okay? Hey, Rosa. He had a serious, extreme devil because, and it says it as much in his little theme song, whatever, because she will not give herself to him in sin, okay? Because she will not quench his burning parts, okay? Not to be too crass. He wants her to burn in hell because that's godlike. Because that's the Spirit of the Lord. Because that's the heart of the Father. You know. Sleep with me or die. Sleep with me or I'll kill you. Horrifying. Utterly horrifying. And so my issue is not with someone saying that what Beyonce is producing is evil. I'm not going to fight you on that. I might tell you it's a different god or goddess than what you're saying. Everything is not Baphomet. Y'all probably saw my post about that. But, I mean, did you see the Hunchback of Notre Dame? I watched it as a kid. I was fine. But I'm just saying, as an adult, I mean, you catch things when you go back and watch things that, I mean, he got his due end. He fell into the flames and all that. Good job. But there's a clear understanding between good and evil, and he wasn't the only depiction of church and religion, because the priests who were assigned to Notre Dame were good, and they housed Esmeralda and Quasimodo. So, I mean, I leave that to your parental discretion. It's probably PG or PG-13, I don't know. So that's up to your discretion. I loved The Hunchback of Notre Dame as a kid, and I read the novel in high school and loved it. So I forget who wrote the novel. Man, that's gonna bug me. But yeah, so what was I saying? Okay, so Beyonce. So my issue is not someone calling out the imagery in Black is King. My issue is not someone debating, is this a rebuttal to Jesus is King, which I didn't buy that either. I'm not saying I didn't buy it in the sense of buy into it, but I didn't purchase it, okay? Because I've just never been a Kanye fan. Happy he's saved. Y'all pray for his mental health, because mental illness is real. And people taking advantage of you when you get saved is very, very, very real. So people fangirling and fanboying instead of discipling you and mentoring you is very real. So that's the church is bad. My issue is not with those things, because Beyonce been out here for a minute. So that's why, like, don't act like this is new. It might be new to you, but it's not new. Beyonce's been depicting certain images for some time, even before it was blatant images of a goddess. Okay? My issue is, what is your motive for talking about it? My issue is there no one else we can talk about? If we gonna talk about somebody? Like, there's no male witches out here? There's no male, like, because it's funny, because we talk a lot about Beyonce, but who is she married to? We caught the woman in the act of adultery, but where is the man? Oh, we let him go because he's a man. But y'all brought the woman to Jesus, but where is the man who was supposedly, if you're telling the truth, was caught in the act of adultery with the woman? You hate women. You have an issue with women. If you'll run your mouth about Beyonce, but you won't say nothing about Jay-Z, who is absolutely in the occult. And when do you think Beyonce started going off the deep end? When she became one flesh with her husband, y'all. That's why you gotta be careful who and what you marry, what spirits you're marrying, what is in the bloodline of the man or woman that you marry, because you become one flesh with that. But y'all don't want to talk about Jay-Z. Y'all talk about him in passing. Oh, he's a great businessman. But y'all not gonna talk about "Do What Thou Wilt," the Aleister Crowley quote. You're not gonna talk about that. Okay. Okay, we're not gonna talk about. Y'all want to talk about Beyonce, but y'all don't want to talk about Jay-Z. Y'all want to talk about a woman, but you're not going to talk about a man. Is this making sense to anyone? Like, so it's addressing Beyonce is not so much my issue unless you're just doing it for clout or to boost your traffic, which a lot of these people are. I've been talking about this stuff for years, okay? I've been blogging since 2012, y'all. That's 8 years. Wrote my first book, released it on Election Day, 2012, okay? So it's imbalance, and it still goes back to this historical coupling of the woman, not just Eve, but the woman, the gender, the race with the serpent. Like the woman is the serpent. The woman is not the serpent. The woman was deceived by the serpent, and that does not mean that all women are more susceptible than men to deception. Because where was Adam? Because nothing happened when Eve ate the fruit. Only problem popped up when Adam ate the fruit, but y'all don't want to talk about that. Not y'all, the person next to you. So there's a very huge imbalance in how we address these things. Again, a theological group I was a part of that recently left. When someone asked about the spirit of Jezebel, y'all know y'all need someone to teach on Jezebel. I'm your girl, okay? And I'll tell you even more phenomenal teachers to listen to who are not me. But someone actually tagged me and positioned me as an expert on that subject. So, of course, I started just spitting knowledge, spitting this. And there were a lot of men showed up opposing what I was saying. Half of them said the spirit of Jezebel doesn't exist, which I don't know what Bible you're reading. Okay. The other half of them were saying men can't have that spirit. Saul, before he became Paul, King Saul, all the Herods, okay, Herod the Great, Herodias, a lot of the Herodians, Absalom. Now we can talk about different manifestations of the Jezebel spirit because every spirit doesn't show up in the same way. But there were several men in the Bible who had a spirit of Jezebel. Balaam, y'all don't believe me? I'm going to pull out my Bible, okay? Turn in your Bibles, if you will, to Revelation 2, okay? And we are going to, let's see, verse 4. And this is to the church of Pergamos. And it says, nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee because thou hast left thy first love. Actually, do I want to? Okay, verse 5. Thou hast left thy first love. Remember, therefore, from whence thou art fallen, and repent and do thy first works. This is not the verse that I want. Okay. Let's see. Bear with me, saints. Bear with me. Is this the one? This is the one. You know what? Let me pull my other Bible. Okay. This is the newer Bible. Let me pull my other Bible. Okay. My other Bible was under my phone. Because I already have it underlined in this Bible. Okay. Going back to verse 2. Okay. It was the wrong verse. Actually, I do want to read my newer Bible. Okay, verse 14, I believe it is. Okay, yes. So verse 14, Revelation chapter 2, again to the church of Pergamos. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, reference Numbers 22 through number 24, chapter 24, okay. Thou hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel to eat things sacrificed to idols and to commit fornication. Okay, now we're going to go down to the church of Thyatira and to verse 20. And it says, notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and seduce my servants to commit fornication, and to eat things sacrificed to idols. Y'all, it's paraphrased, but it's the same wording. It's the same message, because it's the same spirit. Different motivation. Balaam is greedy. Okay? Balaam was seduced by the gifts, the diviner's fees that Balak was presenting to him. Jezebel has a classic Jezebel, if you will, has a different angle, but it is the same spirit. Okay? You could be a low-level Jezebel. You could be somebody with tendencies. You could be someone who's an intermediate Jezebel. You could be someone who's a high-level witch. You could be, you could have this operate in a spirit of witchcraft and not be a formal witch. Okay, and like I said, how can y'all call out? It's real easy to call out Beyonce, but why aren't you calling out the witch in your pulpit? Do y'all know I have Facebook friends? Some of y'all might be on here who are friends with David E. Taylor, and he's a whole witch. I said it. He's a witch. He is a witch. But y'all follow him on Facebook. But your favorite gospel singers show up at his crusades. He's a witch. Y'all follow other witches. Y'all still dabble with Bernard Jordan and Manasseh Jordan. Witch and witch. Warlock and warlock. Y'all still dabble with these different individuals in these pulpits who have a spirit of Python, who operate in spiritual witchcraft. But they're witches. They're prophetic turned into Python. And y'all never knew the difference. So talk about Beyonce, because that's real easy. Because it's not prophetic to call a snake. But when the snake looks like a bunny, then I want to know that it's actually a snake. When the snake looks like my pet dog, I want to know that it's actually a snake. It takes no discernment to call a snake a snake. Someone said I need a list of people. Use your discernment, okay? I'm going to go to Book of Acts, okay? Chapter 16. We're going to start at verse 16. I love my Perry Stone study Bibles, y'all. Verse 16, and it says, and it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with a spirit of divination, aka Python, there's Greek mythology behind that, met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. The same followed Paul and us, and cried, saying, these men are the servants of the Most High God, which shew unto us the way of salvation. She didn't lie. She told the truth. She was 100% accurate. And I'm sure there are people who were drawn to follow Paul and, who is this? Paul and, I always forget. We're going to find out if it's Paul and Silas or Paul and Barnabas, because y'all pray for me. I don't know everything. Paul and Silas, there we go. That's in verse 19. Okay, verse 18. And she did this many days, but Paul, being grieved, and turned and said to the spirit, said, I command thee in the name of Jesus to come out of her. And he came out that same hour. So I need y'all to open your non-King James Bibles and tell me what word was used in place of grieved in your translation. You got ESV, MEV, Amplified, New King James, NLT, NIV, Passion, whatever translation you got. I want to know what word was used in place of grieved in your translation. Type it in the comments. I want to see, because I've read different translations. I can't access them now. Yeah, I need a new laptop. Okay. Mine hasn't started for like 2 weeks. Okay, doing everything on my phone. Okay, but there are translations that say annoyed, frustrated. I think like there are just all these different adjectives used to describe what Paul was feeling. The man was grieved in his spirit. He was agitated in his spirit. His stomach was like, like something in his spirit man affected his natural body and let him know what she's saying is right, but the spirit is unclean. The spirit is Python, not prophecy. It's Python. Okay? It's a counterfeit gift. And he was able, y'all ain't typing. Type and tell me what word your translation says. Do y'all have an actual print Bible? I don't want you to go off my live now. But yeah, please type it in the comments and let me know what word your translation uses. But that's how you know when your spirit is riled up, when your spirit is uncomfortable, when your spirit feels like icky. That's what John Paul Jackson would say. Like when you're encountering a spirit of Jezebel, you feel like really icky and you're just like, I don't know, I'm feeling icky. I don't know what's wrong. Like, ah. But a lot of times you'll defer to the spirit because you're like, oh, but they know more than me. Jezebel calls herself a prophetess. And to be clear, I don't think the woman in Revelation 2 was actually named Jezebel. I think that was the law of double mention, where Jesus, who is speaking pretty much for the first 3 chapters of Revelation, is saying, there's a flesh body, but I am addressing the spirit in the body. Okay? And if you study the region of Thyatira, just like the region of Ephesus, the region in Acts 16, okay, Diana, aka Jezebel, is the strong man or principality of that region. This is why Paul is telling his spiritual son, I don't want the women talking at that church. They got a Jezebel. They got to have a classic Jezebel manifestation problem amongst these newly converted women. It's choosing to manifest through these newly converted women. That's not an admonition to all of the churches, because you have to look at the context. This is not a gospel. This is an epistle. It's a letter to a specific church. Timothy, okay? Your church is having this specific issue. So this is how we deal with this specific issue at your church, not at brother so-and-so's church, at your church. And until we get this issue under hand, I don't want the women speaking. I don't want them talking. Okay, you have a lot of women who are ignorant of the word of God, who are ignorant of the Torah, who are ignorant of the things of the Spirit, okay? Don't talk in church. Because first of all, why would you interrupt the middle of a lecture? Brother Paul, what did you mean when you said it's not the time? It's out of place for a male or a female. But since the men were educated and the women were not, okay, go home and ask your husband. Ask your daddy, ask your brother, ask whatever man of God you live with, okay? Ask him. He didn't say don't learn, he said ask him. But don't interrupt my sermon. Okay, don't interrupt my 5 points in a conclusion. Don't interrupt my sermon plus the altar call to ask a question that will prevent the flow of the Spirit of God in this moment. Okay, context. Context, y'all. Paul was not a woman hater. Paul was not a homosexual like some of y'all think. Paul, my dad, who is a phenomenal Bible scholar, I got all this from my daddy, okay? All the research, all of that from my daddy. Not the prophetic, but the studious side from my daddy. So y'all can thank DesireeMMondesir Sr. for that, okay? He actually said his conclusion is that he believes Paul was actually married at one point due to the office that he held, as far like as a Pharisee or whatever. So context is huge. I don't even remember how I got on that, y'all, but context is massive. Okay, just because something happens in the Bible doesn't mean God is telling you to do it. Whole lot of fornication in the Bible, whole lot of adultery, whole lot of murder, slavery, okay, rape, all sacrifice, all these things. There is even an instance of human sacrifice, okay, with someone who's supposed to be a believer, even though the Bible doesn't say that. He was a deliverer. He wasn't saved, okay. Jephthah's daughter, okay, sacrificed her. God is not telling you to sacrifice her child. Okay, if he would have known what the prophets said in the, or what was said in the Pentateuch, okay, and I'm not necessarily implementing this in 2020, okay, under the dispensation of grace, okay, but under Mosaic law, if a father heard the oath of his daughter, his unmarried daughter, he could override that thing in the spirit, just like a husband could override it if he didn't agree with it. But Jephthah was ignorant. God used him, but he was ignorant. So, context, y'all. Context. Just because it happened in the Bible, like you have to understand the context of what's happening. Is this a societal trait that we're picking up? A societal pattern? Polygamy was a societal practice. It was not a biblical ordained practice. Let a man be the husband of one wife. And there's even a context to that, because I believe in 2020, I mean, you have to understand, you're addressing men. You're addressing primarily men speaking to men. There weren't, outside of Junia, we don't know about a whole lot of other female apostles, especially not early on, since you can't rightly have all these women walking around spending the night with Jesus and the apostles. Come on now. Some of these are married men, like Jesus was single and celibate, okay? Like, you can't have all these women running around chasing Jesus for 3.5 years. How would that look? What would that do for his testimony? Okay, y'all, let's use some wisdom and common sense. It was primarily men on the surface speaking to other men. But I believe that's an admonition against polygamy. I believe that's an admonition against being married and divorced and married and divorced and married and divorced, because Jews had a problem with that, just like we have today. Okay, oh, God didn't tell me that was my wife. I married the wrong woman, so now I have to correct it and marry this other woman. Where you find that in the Bible? Where is that in the scripture? It's nowhere. Nowhere. Now, if you have an unbelieving spouse, you can divorce them if they want to leave you. But Paul said, hey, if they want to stay with you, stay married. He didn't say, oh, leave them because they're not saved. Did I step on some toes with that? Context, y'all. So I'm all over the place now. Okay. But do we have any questions? I feel like I've done enough lecturing, teaching. Do we have questions? I don't know if y'all have asked any and I missed them. I'm going back through the comments now. And thank you to those of you who are on here. Please keep sharing and letting me know where you're watching from, whether this is the live version or the replay. This is a way earlier comment. Terrence Robinson said, that had to be interesting being Jesus' siblings. I can hear Mary saying, why can't you be more like your brother Jesus? You know parents will do that, okay? Just creating all sort of sibling rivalry. But thankfully, some of his brothers were apostles. Let's see. Welcome, welcome, welcome to all of the people I did not actually address on here. I'm sorry. I scrolled past that comment about red velvet cake again. I'm confused as to what it means, but I still want some red velvet cake. And some red velvet Oreos would be phenomenal, y'all. Just saying. Let's see. Any questions about what we have discussed tonight? Hey, Myron. Hey, Tashaka. Hey, Portia. Hey, Timothy. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Aisha. I love y'all. Please don't call me nicknames. I love y'all, but y'all don't know me. Be blessed. Please don't be offended. I'm just really particular about that. Let's see. Welcome, Kevin. Welcome, Nolene. Welcome, Sylvester. Welcome, Rashila. Welcome, Sam. Yeah, so we got St. Lucie, Florida in the house. Yeah, any questions or comments? We started out talking about Beyonce. We did address that. Actually, Beyonce was more so in the middle, even though she was the title. I just wanted to get y'all's attention. We've talked about male chauvinism in the church, and even behind certain, not all, not even most, but behind certain people calling out Beyonce. There's a lot of motives people are calling out Beyonce right now. Some of them want the truth to get out. Some of them want their traffic to get boosted. Okay, I did pull a little bit on that when I titled this Beyonce and nothing else, because y'all know we go on rabbit trail after rabbit trail after rabbit trail after rabbit trail. Can a prophet have a python spirit and Holy Spirit function in them? Ooh. If it wouldn't be for long. And we're going to go back to Balaam, this time to the Old Testament. And I feel like I just read about Balaam to y'all last week. See, this is the Perry Stone Hebraic prophetic New Testament, y'all. Okay, this is the New Testament study Bible alone. This mammoth is the Old Testament, y'all. Oh my God. And somebody blessed me with this. Bless that beautiful, beautiful individual who did this. It's a monster, okay? Turn in your Bibles. And see, we almost turned right to it. To Numbers, what chapter? The story of Balaam starts at 22, but we're going to go to, I want to say, 23. I know, right? This Bible that you know means I'm saved. I know Jesus. I'm so silly, y'all. The size of your Bible does not determine if you know Jesus. If you read on YouVersion, as I often do because I keep getting little highlighting badges, okay, does not make you any less sanctified, saved, or filled with the Holy Ghost and with a mighty burning fire, okay? Whatever works for you, as long as it ain't the Queen James Bible or the Slaves Bible, I don't care. Okay. And I'm going to do a little reading, so bear with me, okay? So this is verse 23, chapter 1. And y'all know the story of Balaam. Y'all should know this by now, so go reread it if you don't know the story. But I'm going to... Sam said that's a saved Bible. It's the Perry Stone Bible, so you know it's good, okay? After his... Let's see, the introduction in this Bible, and this came out in 2017? What year is this? Okay, so this one's copywritten 2019, the Old Testament. The New Testament came out first because it was smaller. They should have updated the introduction, because at the time of the New Testament introduction in that Bible, it says he spent over 140,000 hours in Bible study. It's probably around 160,000 hours that Perry Stone has spent in Bible study. So when I tell y'all I trust his Hebraic teachings, his prophetic end time teachings, I trust it, okay? His autism, he's on the autism spectrum, actually works in favor of this, because it enables him to sit for hours and hours and hours on end undisturbed and study the Bible and in Hebraic teachings. So, yeah. But anywho, we're going to... I'm said the book of Balaam, y'all. Y'all know I know my word better than that. The book of Numbers, chapter 23, and I'm going to do a little reading, okay? Just so y'all get the fullness, okay? And Balaam said unto Balak, build me here 7 altars and prepare me here 7 oxen and 7 rams, because y'all know Balak wanted Balaam. He paid Balaam, a prophet of God. I'm going to find the chapter, because some people will say, oh, Balaam wasn't a prophet. Balaam was a prophet. He did not start off as a soothsayer. He started off as a prophet. Okay, let's see. What verse? Okay. Okay, So Balak, the king of Moab, sends nobles with a diviner's fee to, we're just going to have a whole Bible study, y'all, okay? Sends nobles with a diviner's fee to Balaam. I know it can be confusing. Balaam, Balak, Balaam, whatever. Okay, Baal or Peor, it's all confusing. This is Peor though, okay? Sends these nobles to him with a diviner's fee and says, hey, you know, these Hebrews, you know, they're encroaching on my territory, okay? Even though the Moabites are distant cousins of the Hebrews, because the Moabites were descended from Lot's daughter and Lot, okay? Again, everything in the Bible is not ordained by God, okay? They were brethren, if you will, to the Ammonites, who were descended from Lot and his other daughter, okay? So Lot, of course, is Abraham's nephew. So these are all distant cousins. But this king of the distant cousins of the Hebrews says, they're making me really nervous. I've heard all the wars and rumors of wars and the annihilation. And even though they weren't going to be annihilated because they were human and not Nephilim, different topic, different day, he was really nervous. And so he said, hey, let me get this prophet of God to curse the Israelites, the children of Israel. Okay, so let's see. Peradventure I shall prevail. I love King James, y'all. I didn't grow up on King James. I grew up on New King James. Okay, let's see. Verse 8, chapter 22. And he said unto them, lodge here this night, and I will bring you word again, as the Lord shall speak unto me. And the princes of Moab abode with Balaam, and God came. It doesn't say a lowercase g. It doesn't say an unclean spirit. It does not say a familiar spirit. It said, and God came unto Balaam and said, what men are these with thee? So this was like God walking up on Adam like, where you at? So he was a frequent visitor, bodily, or from a visitation, whether it's vocally, I don't know, I wasn't there, okay? But he showed up in some form to where this is not a surprise to Balaam. He knew God was going to respond. He was not a psychic. He was not a fortune teller at this point. And so Balaam said unto God, Balak the son of Zippor, the king of Moab, has sent unto me, saying blah, 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 blah. So yeah, he's a prophet. Let's see. Trying to skim to see if there's anything else I want to highlight. Okay. Verse, I'm not going to read all this. But later in chapter 22, you see where Balaam is on the donkey and he's riding to Balak to curse Israel on his behalf. Okay. The donkey has more sense and discerning of spirits than the man does, and the Lord allows the donkey to go back to her original form at creation, which is animals talking. Yay! Okay, I'm all about Narnia, y'all. And the donkey talks to Balaam. Is like, bruh, there's something there. When have I ever treated you wrong? Okay, and you just gonna beat me? And he's having a whole conversation with the donkey, which I don't know if that says something about Balaam's state of mind, that he had a whole conversation with the donkey and didn't flinch, y'all. Did not flinch, didn't quicken, didn't pass out, didn't start nothing. Had a whole conversation with the donkey and didn't stutter. I don't know what level of supernatural interactions that is. I'm not sure I want it, okay? But then the angel of the Lord speaks to Balaam when Balaam's eyes are opened. And let's see, verse 35. And the angel of the Lord said unto Balaam, oh wait, no. Bear with me, y'all. Okay, Verse 32, and the angel of the Lord said unto him, wherefore thou hast smitten thine ass, I'm not cursing, it's a donkey, these 3 times, because I went out to withstand thee, because thy way is perverse before me. So you can be a prophet of God and be perverse. Another way to say that would be your way is crooked before me. So you can operate for a time, I don't know what length of time that is, in perversion, because perversion is so much greater than who you sleep with and who you're sexually attracted to. Seduction is so much greater than who you sleep with and who you're attracted to. Okay? It's one facet of a massive operation of spirits in both instances. So your way is perverse or crooked before me. So the angel of the Lord tells him, go on ahead, go on and do it and say only what I tell you to say. So now we're at chapter 21, or 23, sorry. Okay. And, okay, so he goes up to a high place, verse 4, and God met Balaam. Again, God met Balaam, and he said unto him, I have prepared 7 altars. I have offered upon every altar a bullock and a ram, and the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth. He's perverse, but the Lord put a word in his mouth. Okay, and said, return unto Balak, and thus thou shalt speak. And he returned unto him, and lo, he stood by his burnt sacrifice, he and all the princes of Moab. And he took up his parable and said, Balak the king of Moab hath brought me from Aram, out of the mountains of the east, saying, come curse me Jacob, come defy Israel. Blah, 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 blah. Let's jump down to, okay, verse 15. And he said unto Balak, stand here by thy burnt offering while I meet the Lord yonder. And the Lord met Balaam again, and put a word in his mouth, and said, go unto Balak and say thus. Okay, I'm going to skip down again. God is not a man that he should lie, nor the son of man that he should repent. A perverse prophet said that, and we quote it all the time. Context, because he was speaking rightly, even though his spirit was perverse before the Lord. Okay, no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel, all that great stuff. Okay, and Balak is just like, you're getting on my nerves. I paid you to do this, you're doing that. He's just like, don't even curse them. Just don't bless or curse at this point, because you keep blessing them and I'm paying you to curse them. So just don't even do that. Don't do that anymore. Okay. And Balak said, Balaam said unto Balak, build me here 7 altars and prepare me 7 bullocks. Whole lot of bulls dying that day, y'all. Okay. And 7 rams. And Balak did as Balaam said, and offered a bullock and a ram on every altar. For chapter 24, verse 1. And when Balaam saw it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he went not as at other times to seek for enchantments. So you might have been confused in verse 20 or chapter 23, but verse 24 places 23 in context, that even though it doesn't explicitly say it, each time he went to the new altar that was erected and went to inquire of the Lord, he did so using occultic practices. He did not use enchantments as he did at other times. Crazy. Love you, Jasmine. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, God, sis. I will keep preaching. #girlpreacher. He went not as at other times to seek for enchantments, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in tents according to their tribes. And the Spirit of God came upon him. This did not happen the 2 times before in chapter 23. God came to him, but the Spirit of the Lord did not come through him or upon him. Okay? It was a visitation the first 2 times. God was like, screw your witchcraft, because I have a purpose. So you're going to say what I tell you to say, because that's what the angel of the Lord told him. Okay? Which echoed what God said to him before he even left the house. Okay? Balaam lifted up his eyes and he saw Israel abiding in tents, blah, blah, blah. Spirit of God came upon him and he took out the parable and said, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So you guys get the gist. So I would say for a little while, I'll just say unclean spirit. I'm not going to say python specifically. You can, because here's the thing. We were made in the image of God. We were made in the likeness of God. What does that mean? We are tripart beings. We are made in the image of our triune God. Okay? So he has Father, Son, and Spirit. We have body, soul, and spirit. Okay? So in that sense, we're made similar. So when we're believers, oh, you're welcome, Alukemi. When we are saved, our spirit man is saved. Okay? Spirit is saved. Your spirit is hopefully brought under subjection to the lordship of Christ. Your soul, however, must be sanctified. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Okay? Your flesh must be crucified. We are crucified with Christ. Galatians 2:20. Okay? So this can be possessed, filled, indwelt by the Holy Ghost. If this is not sanctified, and if this is not crucified, you have what you play with. You have what you dabble in. Balaam, and of course this is before the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, but the Spirit was still able to come upon people in the Old Testament, and even in certain instances, be in the womb or whatever, like John or whatever. And so, like I believe someone like David probably did have the Holy Ghost before it was really given in a generic context. And there are little exceptions here and there, if you will, to these things, just like Jesus ministered to 2 Gentiles, even though he was called to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, okay? But in Joshua chapter 13, verse, New Bible, bear with me, but I know where it is. Somewhere in chapter 13, it says that Balaam was slain as a soothsayer. So Numbers 24 through 20, or 22 through 24, even though his way is perverse, he's still a prophet. Joshua 13, he's a soothsayer. What happened? Read Numbers chapter 25, okay? He induced Israel to sin. He did exactly what the spirit of Balaam is supposed to do, which is listed in Revelation chapter 2, and invited the Hebrew men in particular into sexual harlotry. In the case of the Jews, since they were covenant people, into sexual adultery, okay, so to speak. And the sexual sin introduced them to the spiritual sin of adultery against God. Playing the harlot, as you see, is a phrase that pops up a lot throughout the Old Testament. They played the harlot and acted like Hosea's wife. Hosea's whole marriage was a prophetic demonstration or a prophetic picture of Israel's behavior to God, their maker, who is their husband. And so you can have a whole lot. You ask Apostle Ivory Hopkins, can a Christian have a demon? He would say a Christian can have whatever they want. I cannot sit here and say I cannot have a demon of lust, but sit up and watch pornography every day, sit up and fornicate every day, sit up and masturbate every day, sit up and send and receive nudies or whatever every day, and think that that is not going to invite an unclean spirit or multiple into my life. Because God does not have you on a leash. And I don't want to use that phrase. God is not controlling your actions. He's not controlling your thumbs. He's not controlling who you text. Now, he could say, okay, Desiree, now you know that's not a good idea. Okay, he can give you that little, where your discernment is like, do it. But you still have the choice to do it or not. He's not the devil. The saying is that God guides, the devil drives, in the sense of like a slave driver. You know what I mean? Slaves don't have a choice. Yes, we're bond servants. Yes, we're servants, but we made that choice. So that picture is more of like the indentured servant who chooses to stay there, like the Old Testament type of slave who's like, you know what, I want to stay with this master. Put the earring in my ear, put the awl through my ear. I am making a choice, the choice that African Americans did not have in America and the Caribbean. I'm making a choice to be a slave for you. And God help me, that just brought Britney Spears to mind. Okay. But it's a choice. I'm choosing to be a bond servant of Christ. Galatians 1:10. I'm a bond servant. Let's see what it says. And I love that passage, by the way. I hope y'all like the word, because I do. I got literally 3 Bibles that are open. For do I now persuade men or God, or do I seek to please men? For if I yet please men, I should not be a servant or bond servant of Christ. Okay, so yeah, you can have whatever you want. Let's see what other comments I missed. You can have a demon. You can have a princess. Okay, here's a fun distinction. This one's free. All of this is free. Okay, it is not the nature, the primary nature, I'll say inclination of a fallen angel. Any category or caste or type mentioned in Ephesians 6:12, princes, aka principalities, powers, who are like their deputies, rulers, aka spirits of the age, and hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. It is not the nature of fallen angels to possess men. I'm not saying it does not happen. I'm not saying it is not the inclination. There we go. That's a better word. It is not the inclination of fallen angels to possess men. There are rare occasions. The 2 sons of perdition being Judas and the future Antichrist, capital A, okay? I believe the Queen Jezebel, King Ahab, Nimrod, who I believe was possessed with the spirit of Baal, his mama/wife, who is possessed with the spirit of Babylon. There's select individuals that you see. Why? Because angels are assigned to the heaven. When the cosmic war happened, the spiritual realm was split in half. So you have God's supernatural realm, and then you have the realm of the kingdom of darkness, which is the second heaven, aka outer space. Have fun with that, okay? So you have angels who are assigned to the heavens. They possess heavens. Their seats of power, their thrones are in heaven. They're not assigned to the earth. They are assigned to the heaven. That's why it was illegal in Genesis chapter 6 when they came down, however they came down, okay, when they put on human flesh, however they put on human flesh, and took human wives that they were sexually attracted to, okay, and gave birth to a brand new race of beings called the Nephilim. And where did the spirit come from? Because the spirit in them was not from God. So the spirit was an evil, unclean spirit that we now know to be demons, who are bound to the earth due to the nature of their creation, their inordinate creation, their inordinate conception. Okay? So demons possess, because if you are an unclean spirit who was born in a body that is bound to the earth, and then when your original body died, you lost your body, what is now your end game? To possess a new body, because a demon is a disembodied spirit. If you are disembodied, where did your body go? Okay? Where'd your body go? Do y'all really want me to go here? Do you want me to go here? Because I want to go here, but I only want to go here if y'all want me to go here. Okay? Type in the comments. Let me know, or throw up a heart or a like or something to let me know if y'all really want me to go here, because it's been a little minute since we went here. Let me know, saints. Let me know. Demons, one of the early church fathers called the Nephilim demons bound in human flesh. I got one person say go there. Do we have any a witness of 2 or 3? Okay, we got 2 yeses. Can we get a third? Amen. I'm so churchy. I'm not like this all the time, but I am super churchy. I can be churchy 24/7, but I am not churchy 24/7. Okay. So angels were tempted by demons. No. Angels who were tempted fathered what became demons. Genesis chapter 6. Okay. You know what? I'm going to give y'all a real story. Okay. Okay, we got 3 go theres. Okay. So I'm not going to start in chapter 6. I am going to start in Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, okay? And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enosh, if you will. This is not Enoch, Enosh. S-H, not C-H. Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. Mistranslation. Okay? You don't have to be a Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic scholar to understand this. Because why would men begin to call upon the Lord in Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, if Adam was calling on the Lord in the Garden of Eden before time even commenced? That doesn't make sense. If Adam was a prophet, how could he be a prophet and not call upon the Lord? If Abel was a prophet, how could he be a prophet and not call upon the Lord? Men were calling upon the Lord since the Garden of Eden. Pre-fall. Pre the creation and commencement of time. Okay? Time began when they were put out of the garden. Okay? Adam and Eve called on God in the garden. So men did not start calling upon the Lord in Genesis 4:26. Makes no sense, okay? Context, y'all. Context. Now, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but that whole chapter is about Cain and the lineage of Cain. I'm not going to go super into that, although I love teaching on that topic, y'all. I do have teachings on Periscope at DesireeMMondesir if you want to catch that. Okay. But men did not begin to call upon the name of the Lord in Genesis 4:26. They began to profane the name of the Lord. Okay? Not call upon, profane. So they was using his name, but they was taking it out of context. Okay? Let's skip past the genealogy in Genesis 5 and then go to Genesis 6. Okay? Verse 1, and it came to pass, when men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, a.k.a. Benai Elohim, a.k.a. angels, a delegation of angels, according to Jewish tradition, these angels started off good. All the angels started off good. Okay, so this is not 1/3 of the angels that fell with Lucifer, as we see the depiction of way later in Revelation 11. Okay, this is not who fell when Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning. Okay, this is a different delegation. Again, won't put you in heaven or hell to believe this. This is just my thinking. Perry Stone would tell you the same thing, and I'm reading his Bible. Okay. These, according to Jewish tradition, came down to teach man righteousness. Okay? But who is the only one who can put on human flesh and not sin? Jesus. Okay? The New Testament tells us that. So somehow, I don't know how. Okay? Don't know how. Mystery. Somehow they put on human flesh, although we do know the Apostle Paul tells us to be careful how you treat strangers because you could be entertaining an angel unaware. Okay, angels lost none of their ability. They lost none of their power when they fell. They lost their authority because authority is derived from relationship. Power is a gift. It's a gift. They didn't lose their power because the gifts and callings of God are irrevocable. So their nature did not change. Their purpose did not change. The power and the gifts and the skills and the talents and all of that did not change. They lost their authority because they committed a military act of rebellion against the Lord of hosts and created a new army. They tried to do a coup. It failed, so they, I forget the military terms, but they created a new kingdom, a new army, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now they left their former state, as Jude said. They are now enemies of God. But somewhere in this process that we're not sure exactly how this happened, and there are different, there's a school of thought that demons are fallen angels. Scripture blatantly disproves that, and I can tell y'all how. Just read the nature of angels and the nature of demons. It is not the same. Okay, I'll get to that. Somebody remind me. Okay. And then there's the thinking, and I personally subscribe to the gap theory. Again, won't put you in heaven or hell, but I believe contextually the gap theory makes sense because everything God creates is perfect. The gap theory postulates that between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, the earth was created perfectly. Okay. Without any chaos or destruction, which the words form and void, tohu and bohu in Hebrew, denote chaos and destruction and confusion, okay? There was none of that because everything God does is perfect the first time, okay? Then somehow there was a pre-Adamic race not made in the image and likeness of God that inhabited the earth, and somehow in conjunction with the fall of Lucifer, don't know details, but somehow in conjunction with that, I personally believe it was a bit Atlantean, sort of like what happened with the king of Thyatira, or not Thyatira, the king of Tyre, prince of Tyre, if you will, the destruction, if you will, that came from that. The earth is destroyed. Completely destroyed. Chaos, darkness, confusion. But then, and let me go back. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. God departs. Because when there is wrath, wrath is no judgment. Wrath is no grace. Wrath is the complete absence of God from the earth. Okay, that's what the tribulation is going to be like. That we have never seen wrath like that, except for maybe like small instances like Sodom and Gomorrah, something like that. We've seen judgment. Judgment is still ultimately for the sake of repentance. Wrath is he did this, okay? So watery destruction, the first global flood takes place. Destroys completely the pre-Adamic race, which is probably the skeletons we think were Neanderthals, would explain the destruction of the dinosaurs and things like that. The only thing that can survive this is what perhaps lives in the water, maybe. But not even this, because this is not Noah's flood. This is the first global flood. And there's an ice age, because what happens when God turns his face away? Revelation talks about we won't need light. There won't be any day or night because he is the light. Is he not? Is he not the light of the world? So if you take the sun away from the earth, you have the ice age. Everything dies. Okay? But then the Spirit of the Lord, who is a consuming fire, hovers over the face of the waters. And then creation as we know it exists. Okay, so now going back to the pre-Adamic race. I used to think this until I really sat down and listened to one of Perry Stone's teachings and actually took notes, and I got mad because my theory was disproved. This theory was disproved that I'm about to tell you. There is a school of thought that believes that demons are the disembodied spirits of the pre-Adamic race. So I probably held that belief for about a year or so, give or take, maybe 2, I don't know. And then I really sat down and I really heard the teaching. Chuck Missler too, he's phenomenal. I researched it, I looked at it, and contextually from the Word of God, it made the most sense that yes, disembodied spirits, but of the Nephilim. I can prove it to you if you turn to Psalm. We just having a Bible study in the middle of the night, y'all. Deal with it or go to sleep and watch the replay, okay? Because I am in my element and I am loving it, okay? Chapter 22, the book of Psalms. Let's see. This is a messianic psalm. It's David is prophesying as if he is Jesus, okay? Or excuse me, the chief musician. Well, no, it says a psalm of David, so it's a minstrel and a psalm. Okay, let's see what verse I'm going to come to. I'm not going to read this whole thing, I promise. Okay, what verse? Verse 12, sorry. Many bulls have compassed me, strong bulls of Bashan have beset me around. Okay, Bashan was a notable place in the Old Testament at the conquest of Canaan, where Nephilim tribes dwelt. King Og of Bashan was a Nephilim. The scripture specifically says that this is a Nephilim tribe. Israel, the children of Israel were given specific orders to annihilate all of the Nephilim tribes. If you do your research, all of the Eames, the Zamzumims, the I can't even think of all their names, the Emims, the Rephaim, all of these Nephilim tribes were the ones that they were commanded to annihilate, okay? And then the Amalekites, but that was because of how they chose to treat the Israelites. But they were human. But all the other tribes that they were specifically told to annihilate were Nephilim tribes. Bashan was one of those Nephilim controlled regions. Okay, going back to Psalm 22. Verse 13, they gaped upon me with their mouths as a ravening and roaring lion. Who comes as a roaring lion? Lucifer. It's not always Jesus who's a lion, which is why you need discernment when you're seeing stuff in the spirit realm, in dreams and visions. Okay, let's see. Skip down to verse 16. For dogs have compassed me. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. Again, this is a messianic psalm. This is like as if David somehow had supernatural knowledge of how Jesus is literally feeling on the cross. So while David is saying this, it's like Jesus is saying or feeling this, or however you want to word that, thousands of years later on the cross, okay? Because let's look. I'm poured out like water. All my bones are, out of a joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, blah, 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 blah. I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. This didn't happen to David. This happened to Jesus, okay? Who are the dogs? Dogs in the Old Testament context represent unclean spirits. In the New Testament context, when this is actually happening to Jesus, they represent unclean spirits. In the Old Testament, unclean peoples, and it wasn't the clean peoples who had Nephilim tribes, okay? It was the unclean peoples, and then in the New Testament context, it's the context of unclean spirits. So you have bulls of Bashan gnawing and gaping at Jesus. Then you have dogs surrounding Jesus. Bulls and dogs. These are references for demonic spirits. Okay. Another, and I won't go there because y'all know this. What is it? Luke 11 and whatever other gospels tell this story. I think it's at least Matthew and Mark 2. You read there, it's a phenomenal chapter for spiritual warfare. Jesus says when an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places. Okay, so a stronger man came along, because that's reading context, y'all. A strong man came along, bound and plundered the lesser strong man. Okay, in this case, unclean spirit. And I believe strong men are like chieftains, if you will, of demons. Okay, not fallen angels, demons. Okay, so when an unclean spirit is evicted out of a human being, he goes through dry places. Do dry places sound like heavenly places? Are heavenly places dry? let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. Okay. And this was just some revelation the Lord gave me, like mid-random Periscope teaching. Okay, let's see. Verse 6. Chapter 1, verse 6, Genesis. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. Verse 8, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So heaven is watery. Heaven has moisture. We get rain, we get sleet, we get hail, we get snow from the heavens, okay? The heavens are not dry places. The earth is a dry place. So when an unclean spirit goes out of a man, it doesn't go to watery places. It goes to dry places. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't want to be there. It says, ugh, this is not what I'm used to. This is not what I like. I'm disembodied. I need a body. Let me go back to my house. Clean, swept up, because remember, the stronger man plundered and bound the lesser strong man and got rid of him, kicked him out, evicted him, okay? So unless you've made the strongest man the Lord of your life, the unclean spirit can go right back in and bring 7 more demon spirits wicked than themselves, and all of them just moving together and have a party in you, okay? So that is a clear picture to me of demonic possession. Not possession by a principality. Happens on rare occasions. What is the purpose? Demons possess humans. They want a human body again. They want anybody. If they can't get a human, they'll get an animal, a reptile, whatever. That's where you get the idea of familiar spirits possessing an animal. Black cat. I love black cats. Black cats are not evil, y'all. Okay, but just whatever familiar spirit, owl, serpent, whatever. Okay, and then if they can't get an animal, they will get an inanimate object or a place. Familiar spirits familiarize themselves with people, places, and things. Okay, that's how that works. That's why they impersonate the ancestors. That's why they impersonate your dead loved ones, dead people that you love. So thank you, Larry. And so that's why it's so dangerous to mess with that stuff. Going back to Beyonce, okay, we're not going to dwell there. We're well past Beyonce at this point. Beyonce needs to hear this teaching, okay? And so the purpose of demons is to possess people, places, and things in that order, okay? But the purpose of fallen angels is to possess heavens. The purpose of angels, period, is to possess heavens, because there was a prince over Israel. It's Michael. Prince over the church, Michael, okay? He's their principality, okay? Because principality is not a demonic term. It is a neutral term, because Michael was a prince and Gabriel is a prince, okay? So Peter, I believe it was, says that the prince Michael is arguing with the prince Lucifer over the body of the prince Moses. A prince arguing with a prince over a prince. Okay? So the title principality or prince, or even strong man, because that was a picture of Moses being a strong man in the earth. Okay? From a natural, normal, that's speaking to influence, that's not speaking to a spiritual nature or inclination, okay? I feel like I'm all over the place. I hope this is making sense, y'all. I hope I'm not going too fast. But their purpose is to possess heavens. So there's territory. What is it? Matthew 11:12. You know, violent men are advancing the kingdom, but the violent take it by force. It's violent people on both sides, y'all. You got to be violent. You can't be nice and genteel in this, okay? It's a territorial battle. I encourage you guys to get my book, The Little Book of Warfare, from my website, DesireeMMondesir.com, because I have a whole chapter on territorial familiar spirits. it's my favorite chapter. It was based on a blog post that spawned the whole book, okay? And it's my favorite book to date. I love that book, and I'm hoping to expand it and add to it and re-release it and put it in print because it's only in PDF form right now. But I love that book. So there are spirits that are assigned to earthly regions and earthly territories. There are earthly strongmen. Legion was a strong man. He was not a principality. He was a strong man assigned to the region of Decapolis. Now, whether it was Gerasa or the Gadarenes, depending on which gospel you're reading, whether it was one man, whether it was two, it doesn't matter. It was one strong man assigned to the region of Decapolis, which was a pagan region. Deca meaning 10, polis meaning cities, 10 cities. They were Hellenistic or Greek cities near Israel, okay? And so he was a strong man over that region. The pigs were likely being raised as a sacrifice to Zeus. Jews don't eat pigs. They don't eat pork. Neither do Muslims, because they're still descended from Abraham, okay? So they don't eat pork, but the pig is a sacrifice to Zeus, who is a principality strong man. It's a Greek god, okay? So that's why the spirit was like, oh, don't send us from the region, because they were assigned by hell to that natural territory, to that natural region. So they're like, okay, we lost our boy, but we still need a place for all, for the strong man and for the thousands of spirits under that strong man to dwell, okay? But then you have principalities. Lucifer would obviously be the ultimate prince of princes, if you will. He's prince of princes of hell. He is the god of this world. He is the ruler of this world. He is the prince of the power of the air, being the second heaven, because again, he is a fallen angel. So he is assigned to the heavens. Fallen angels possess systems. Okay? Systems, not the earth, but the systems that govern the earth. If I can possess a system, I don't need to possess the people. This is why on occasion you will see a principality, whatever it may be, possess a strong leader of men. This is why a spirit named Jezebel would possess a Sidonian, whatever, princess named Jezebel. Because the principality was more influential in the queen Jezebel than it would have been in the heavens above Israel. Okay? They were shifting the territory of Samaria and creating a mixture of a pagan place that was no longer sanctified unto Jehovah. Omri, the father-in-law of Jezebel, bought a hill and colonized it with this demonic mixture that even lasted into Jesus' day, where the woman at the well is saying, well, we worship on this hill, but y'all worship in Jerusalem. Who's right? I don't know. Because they were, pardon the term, they were like a half-breed people. They were Jewish, but there were so many Tyrians, so many Sidonians, so many Phoenicians, Syro-Phoenicians, if you will, who came into that region and intermarried and mixed and did trade and all that with those people, that they created a mixture. Babylon represents mixture. Jezebel serves the spirit of Babylon. Jezebel has literally the name Baal in her name, Jezebel. Baal is another variant of the god Baal. Her father was Baal. She serves the system of Babylon. Her mama is the whore of Babylon. Okay, I know there are some people who think Jezebel is the same as the queen of heaven, aka Babylon. I disagree for several reasons. Not gonna put you in heaven or hell, okay? Doesn't make any difference as far as that is concerned at the end of the day, although it would probably help you in warfare. They're similar. She is like her mama, but the book of Revelation shows us such a more massive picture of the operations of the Queen of Heaven than the operation of Jezebel. Jezebel is an ambassador of Babylon. Jezebel is an ambassador of compromise. She is the prophet, if you will, of Babylon. She is not Babylon herself, mother of harlots, but she is a harlot like a mama. She does have paramours and those who fornicate with her like her mama. She does have children like her mama, but she is not her mama. And obviously there's not actual demon family groupings and demonic family groupings, which is for the sake of conversation in a context that we can understand. Am I rambling? Is this making sense? We were talking about the Nephilim. Okay, so let me go back to the Nephilim. Okay, I was proving to you that they were profaning the Lord in Genesis 4:26. Okay, Genesis 6. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years, because before this they were living 500, 600. I'm sorry, they were living like 900 years. Do the genealogy. Well, not. Let me say this. Yeah, read the genealogies in chapter 5, and you'll see, if you do the math, you'll see how long they were living. Okay, so I'll give you the simple way. I'm not good at math, but I'm good at this. Okay, how long did they live before they had their firstborn, and how did they live after? And then it tells you at the end of that verse how long they lived altogether. Okay, so they lived for a long time. Okay, Noah was 500 when he started building the ark? Yeah, verse 32. Noah was 500 years old, and he gave birth to triplets, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It's assumed, or presumed, if you will, inferred, because nowhere else do you see multiple children being born at one time, unless there was some sort of multiple birth. Okay. So because of their wickedness, the Lord says, I'm not dealing with y'all get on my nerves. 120 years. So they don't immediately jump down to 120 years, just as we don't immediately die when we leave Eden. But then, okay, 700 years, 600 years, 500 years, 400 years, 300, and eventually they get down to living approximately 120, and then in the days of David, 70, by reason of strength, 80, okay? Verse 4, there were giants, aka Nephilim, in the earth in those days, and also after that. Now the Nephilim were giants, but giantism was one feature of the Nephilim. It was not the only thing about them. Okay, like one of Goliath's brothers had like 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. There were different factors. They were monstrosities. Okay, that the word giant is actually from the Greek gigantus, which means earthborn. Has nothing to do with their size. We've made it about their size because of what we looked at in the ancient world, but it is not actually their size that makes them a Nephilim. Okay, that's why you can't look at a super tall person, an athlete, a pro NBA star, and say, oh, you're a Nephilim. Those are not the ones you need to worry about. Just saying. Okay, and they might be superhuman, but it'll be more like what's in the Marvel universe, than what's on the NBA court, okay? There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, and the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Now the word there is Gibborim, Gibborim, which is actually also used to define David's mighty men. It's ironic that David's mighty men took out the evil mighty men of his day. Okay, so that's just what the word means, mighty men. But these were supernatural mighty men. These were demonic, evil, wicked, human-hating, human-destroying, human DNA corrupting mighty men, because the fallen angels cannot produce angels. Angels, that's why they're identified as sons of God, because angels are direct creations of God, just as Adam was a direct creation of God, just as you and I as believers are direct creations of God from a spiritual standpoint, okay? But they do not beget angels, what they begat when they coupled and interbred with the human race, was a third race called the Nephilim, or the fallen ones, fallen because their fathers were fallen as well. Okay, and so the Nephilim could continue to marry human women, and because there's no Nephilim women that we see ever in scripture, they could continue to marry human women and continue to father more Nephilim, which is how you get like Nephilim tribes and things like that. So Goliath is the son of Gath, who was a giant. His daddy wasn't a fallen angel, his daddy was a giant. So giants can beget more giants. Nephilim can beget more Nephilim, but angels can only beget Nephilim, if that makes sense. Okay. Verse 5, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air. For it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. Like that play on words. And Noah walked with God. Verse 11, the earth was also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Verse 12, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, because man did not start calling upon the Lord in Genesis 4:26. They were calling on the Lord before, but they began to profane the Lord. They began to create an environment of wickedness, an environment of evil. Sin began to ripen and grow and mature and become rife in the earth, which made it an interesting place for angels, however you view them, to come down and fall into the sin of lust and take on women. What godly person do you know that would give your daughter or your sister to a fallen angel as a wife? It wouldn't be a man of God. Apostle Pagani has a fascinating theory that made me totally rethink my whole teaching on the descendants of Cain. And his belief is that when you jump down to Lamech, not the father of Noah, but the descendant of Cain, who had the sons Tubal, Cain, Jubal, Jabal, and a daughter named Naamah, that Naamah, because no woman is ever mentioned randomly in the Bible. That's how important we are, okay? No one is ever mentioned randomly. You see no inventions at this early on in the human race, except what Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal Cain create. It is his postulation. Again, won't put you in heaven or hell to believe this, but very fascinating, and you can't disprove it. Theory that the technology that they had to be the father of agriculture, the father of instruments and music, the father of metalworking and smithing and weaponry, was actually technology that was given to them by the fallen angels, given to the descendants of Cain. And what did they give in return for this amazing gift of this fallen technology that heathen would call sacred sciences and technology? They gave them the first human wife, their sister Naamah. So it is his postulation, not doctrine, not gospel, but postulation, that Naamah was the first wife of a fallen angel. Because the Bible doesn't say in Genesis 6 that the fallen angels fornicated. Does not say, although I'm sure there was rape and all that, it doesn't say that they raped the women. The Bible does not shy away from telling us when someone was raped. Didn't shy away from telling us when Jacob's daughter Dinah was raped. It doesn't shy away from telling us when David's daughter Tamar was raped. It doesn't shy away from telling us when any rape took place in Scripture. It says they took wives. Wives. Okay? In the ancient world, even in our world, in certain circles, when you marry, it is an exchange. I'm not being nasty. I'm just saying political marriages. Been rewatching Scandal a lot lately. There was an episode where they talked about political marriages. Okay, political marriage is an exchange. A marriage. Not recently, because all the royals are marrying commoners these days. Literally all of them. But like in the past, even as recently as Queen Victoria, she married a very distant cousin, not in a nasty sense, but just, genealogically far enough away, but still a descendant of Queen Victoria, which is easy to do when you had 9 children and 8 of them married into different households, or 8 or 9 of them married into different royal households across Europe. Okay, and those households intermarried and all that. Okay, so you see that they're marrying. There's such a thing as a suitable royal marriage. If you're talking about, there's political dynasties, different dynasties colliding, like, and I'm not saying this is a political marriage, I'm just saying it's sort of like 2 dynasties coming together. In an American context, Ralph Lauren's son, I don't know his name, married, I want to say it was Jeb Bush's daughter. So she's Lauren Bush Lauren. So you have political royalty marrying fashion royalty, purely American, with the Bushes and the Lorens. Okay, Jackie Kennedy and Jack Kennedy, President JFK. And so that was a really good political marriage. Obviously not in the sense of what a marriage should be, but from a political standpoint, Jack and Jackie were great together. Okay. And so you just have, marriage was an exchange. It was a tribal, a lot of times, exchange. Like, you give me this, I'll give you her. You do this for me, and I'll exchange that with you. So this is the postulated exchange that Apostle Pagani gives, that in exchange for their wives, their sisters, and not their wives, sorry, their daughters and their sisters being given to the fallen angels, the newly minted flesh-wearing fallen angels, in exchange for that, they gave them wisdom. Now, they came down to teach men righteousness and wisdom. So when they fell, guess what became fallen to? Their wisdom, their ways, their thoughts, their paradigms. What they were teaching men became corrupted. This is why there's a belief that says the original wives of the Watchers, which is the name recast, if you will, of the angels supposedly who came to the earth. It's only mentioned in like Daniel chapter 4. There's no other place Watchers are specifically mentioned in the Bible by that identifying title or whatever. The original wives of the Watchers were witches. The original witches, because their wisdom became fallen. What's a wise woman? A wise woman is a witch. It's just a nice name for a witch. Began to teach the demonic side of herb lore. Began to teach the black arts that are now Wicca, New Age, which is Old Age. Witchcraft and idolatry always go hand in hand. Began to teach that, and they began to teach and teach and teach and teach and teach, and just corrupt the earth, which so much so to the point where in Genesis chapter 6, God is continually stating how evil, how wicked. You're so evil, I don't want you to live for 900 years anymore. I only want you to live for almost a tithe of that time. Your years will be 120. You're evil and you're wicked, and by the way, I'm going to destroy your whole race. You're entire race, actually 2 races. We're going to destroy the human race and all the Nephilim that aren't smart enough to escape it. Okay, because Apostle Bugani has another postulation about that, which I won't get into tonight. Okay, we're going to destroy everything, all flesh. All flesh is corrupted in the Lord's sight in Genesis 6. The animals, everything, that'll make you think twice about those half human, half animal looking things in mythology, won't it? Everything is corrupted. If Nineveh doesn't repent, I'm killing everything. So even the animals were in sackcloth and ashes. Very interesting. Let's see what some of y'all are talking about. Destroying everything because everything's DNA was corrupted. Everything was perverse before the Lord at that point. Why destroy? Because the Messiah has to come. If all flesh is corrupt before the Lord, who can the Messiah come through? Where will our redemption come from? Because there would be no virgin who is blessed and highly favored of the Lord. There would be no Elizabeth and no Zechariah to father John the Baptist, the herald of the Messiah. There would be no David. There would be none of the bloodline, for the most part, of the Messiah, because the DNA is corrupted. It's not human anymore. But it said the seed of the woman in Genesis 3:15. The seed of the woman, not the seed of the corrupted hybrid. Okay? The seed of the woman, not the seed of a womanoid or a humanoid. The seed of a woman would bruise the head of the serpent. So the serpent says, I have to be cunning because serpents are cunning. How do I prevent this coming? Aha! Let me send these fallen angels or corrupt these angels who are do-gooders and seduce them into sin, and then I will use their weakness to corrupt the literal genetics and DNA of humanity and prevent the Messiah from coming. Because if he can't come, we don't have redemption. If he can't come, there's no cross. If he can't come, there's no authority. There's no resurrection. There's no resurrection power. If he can't come, there's no, I've given you authority over all the power of the enemy. If he can't come, we can't be crucified with Christ and raised again and resurrected with him. We're done for. If he can't come, we will die, as would have been the case had what happened in the Garden of Eden not been corrected. If what the first Adam did stayed in motion, there would have been no second Adam. This is why I teach on this stuff, because it all points back to our redemption. It all points back to the end time deception, where we're now. Paul said in Galatians 1, if even an angel in heaven preaches another gospel, let him be accursed. Revelation, I want to say 14, says there are angels who will declare the everlasting gospel. Angels can preach. Why would an angel preach? To be an angel of light, to deceive you, unless it's sent from God Almighty. This is why you have to try the spirits to see if they be of God. I wonder, did the people living at the time of Noah try, test, weigh, and examine the spirits to see if they be of God? Or were they too wicked to care? But Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. That's what he said. I wrote a book on it, y'all, and I have a teleseminar on it too. I don't know if someone on here has the book. The book came out in 2015, and then the teleseminar is just the days of Noah, and it's very heavy on fallen technology and sacred structures and all that fun stuff and pyramids and all my nerdiness gone wild. # girl nerd. Does anyone have questions? I know I asked that before. Let me go back through and see some of these comments. My voice is starting to go, y'all. I don't even know what time it is. Somebody type in the comments. Okay. Chauvinism. Larry, you said chauvinism. We are well past that. But just study the early church fathers. I'm not talking about the apostles. I'm talking about the early church fathers who started changing things around when it was no longer convenient for them in the Catholic and Protestant churches. Study what they had to say about women. The book How the Irish Saved Civilization has an excellent parallel, casting the example of St. Patrick, who is not what I have described as a chauvinist, who had a love and a genuine healthy relationship with women, which was probably due to the very heavy matriarchal nature of the Celtic culture, Celtic family and societal structure. And then cast that against the picture of, I want to say, St. Augustine. In literal quotes. It's disturbing. It's very disturbing. Feel free to catch the replay. Please do. Let's see. And thank y'all who've stuck around this long, and I mean for any length of time. Larry, could the war in Revelation 12 be associated with the creation of earth mentioned in Genesis 1? Always wondered this. Revelation 12 is... Revelation is such a funky... And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's such a funky timeline, because again, God dwells outside of time. Revelation 12 is a picture of time. It's not something that's going to happen. But so you could say, in a sense, it kind of goes back to the creation, but specifically the creation of the covenant people, because Revelation is not about the church. Like the actual Revelation, John 4 onward, or excuse me, Revelation 4 onward is not about the church. It's not about Gentiles. We are not the center of attention, y'all. We're not. We might be some of the martyrs, okay? But we're not the center of attention. We're not the 144. We're not the chosen. We're not Jehovah's Witnesses, okay? Those are the Jewish people. There is no replacement theology in the Bible, okay? The only replacement there is that we are grafted into the vine of Abraham. Okay, if you're grafted into something, you don't replace it. You become it. Okay, so this replacement theology in a lot of modern churches is demonic, because it's a subtle anti-Semitism, and black Israelites, black Hebrews are another, unless you literally have Jewish blood that is actually Jewish, not you just telling me because you black, you Jewish. The devil's like, I ain't got no Jewish blood. I've seen my DNA results, okay? No Jewish blood whatsoever, not a drop, as far as I know. Maybe a drop, but nothing prominent enough to show up, okay? That's another replacement theology. It's just a black version. So it's demonic. I said it. It's demonic. It is a false teaching and a false gospel. Jesus was not black. I said that before, I'll say it again. Okay. So we are grafted into that. But it's the creation, if you will, of the chosen one who came from the chosen people, if you will. So it takes a lot. This is why I don't teach on end time stuff, really. I just defer to Perry Stone and Chuck Missler, okay? Because I trust them. Notice I didn't say Larry B. Jenkins or Tim LaHaye or Pat Robertson or John Hagee. Okay? Yeah. I didn't say nobody who's selling prepper food and bunker stuff on their channels. I said Perry Stone and Chuck Missler. Okay. I don't know if that answered your question. But it's a picture of what has happened over time. Perry Stone says the serpent started off as a serpent, or Satan started off as a serpent in the Garden of Eden. He's a dragon in Revelation 12. Somebody's been feeding that thing, okay? So it's a picture over time, that particular chapter. And then there are other ones that deal with specific times. It's a lot going on. So it's kind of like This Is Us. If any of y'all watch This Is Us, it's like, okay, we're in the present time. You know, they're in their 30s. They're about to be 40, you know, and then you go back to childhood, and then you go back forward, and then you flash forward to the future and see Kate's baby. You know what I mean? It's just, the Bible does that because God is not constricted by time. He created it to serve him. He is not subject to it. So that's why a prophet can see into the future and bring it back. That's why Kim Clement used to sing, I want to go to the future and bring it back and bring it back, because that's what prophets do. You see into the future and you bring it back. Now you can see other places too. You can see into the past. Okay, that would be, it could be a word of knowledge. If it's not dealing with the present, it could be seeing into the past. Okay, but prophets can see into the future. They can foretell the future because they're still pulling what is in the future into the present and then speaking it forth. Okay, let's see. There's a whole lot of that. Let's see what else y'all talking about. No dry places in heaven. None. My God is oily. He ain't got no dry places up there. Okay. Chapter 2 of Genesis. Nothing grew until he caused rain. No. Because there was no rain until the flood. There were mists. There were, okay, so you said, I misread what you said. Yeah, mist coming out of the ground, absolutely. No life without water, absolutely. No creation without water. We are water. If an evil spirit possesses an animal, would that animal be able to talk at that point? It could happen. There's a story in C. Peter Wagner's book. I don't know the name of it, y'all. And it was one of those books that was printed with 2 different names. It's somewhere in my arsenal somewhere. Yeah, I got like 500 books. Pray for me. And he tells the story of this missionary. Don't ask me where she went to, because I don't remember. But she's in this really obscure place, and this little woman has not been trying to spiritual warfare. She don't know nothing. She just loves Jesus and wants to serve him with joy and gladness. Okay. So there she's teaching the native people, the indigenous people of wherever, and this woman, this village woman, comes around and terrifies everybody. They call her Mama, and the missionary decides, I'm going to go to Mama's house. Her cute little self decides to go and bring Jesus to Mama. And so she, the author of that particular, because it's a compilation of different stories, that particular book by C. Peter Wagner. And so the minister is saying that the woman steps over what she assumes to be a log as she's stepping into Mama's house, sits down with Mama and her husband, shares the gospel, all of that. Are you interested in hearing about Jesus, accepting Jesus and all that? Somehow, I don't know how, but people are scared of her because she's a witch or something along those lines. Shaman, medicine woman, whatever she was, something along those lines. And eventually the missionary realizes she did not step over a log to get into the house. No, it wasn't a log. It was a python that was the size, girth-wise, of a log, y'all, that was chilling around the whole living space of that house. Woman had no idea. She was literally sitting in the circle of a serpent. That sounds like a book title. Somebody write it before I do, okay? Sitting in the circle of a serpent. And the husband says, look, if you can get her to get rid of the snake, I'll accept your Jesus. So after a little bit of talking and persuading and Holy Ghost influence, Mama decides, fine, you can get rid of the snake. What was so terrifying was not just that it was a python the size of a freaking log. What was horrifying was the serpent spoke to Mama. Yes, those words just came out of my mouth and were printed in ink in probably several languages, okay? The serpent, I don't know how, if it actually bodily opened its mouth or if it was some sort of ESP telepathy. I don't care. It was a devil. Okay. It was a familiar to that woman named Mama. Okay. So, she lets her husband take the serpent to the river, chop it up, and throw it in. Bless God. Glory be. Deliverance is well in process, well in motion. Missionary says, okay, Mama, is there anything else like this you have anywhere that talks to you? And after some hesitancy, Mama reveals that she has a little box. Okay? Little box. In the box, and this is a true story, y'all, in the late C. Peter Wagner's book, although I don't know the name of the man who's telling the story. The missionary discovers that Mama has a box. In the box is a dead, molded over baby that speaks to Mama. This is why all of the village people were terrified of Mama, because she got a snake with the girth of a freaking log in a dead, molded over baby in a box, who are familiars that are speaking to her and giving her information. But guess what? Mama gave up the baby. Her husband was able to bury the baby. He got saved. Mama got saved, okay? Mama got saved. Mama got delivered. Mama didn't play in her witchcraft anymore. Shonda da Bosa. So, all that to say, yes, in some sense, probably depends on the scenario. Animals could talk. If the Spirit of the Lord opened the mouth of a donkey, if there's a counterfeit, there's an authentic. If there's an authentic, there's a counterfeit, unless it's creation. Okay? Let's see what else. Terrifying but true story. Yeah, C. Peter Wagner. I really can't remember the name of the book, y'all. Oh, wait, you meant my book, The Little Book of Warfare. Go get it. DesireeMMondesir.com. Larry, you also said, I believe Jezebel is a seducing spirit. Absolutely. For this reason, Jezebel's intention is to control. Jezebel seduces those in power in order to control them. When a person's mind is seduced successfully, the body is vulnerable to whatever the mind is subject to. So Jezebel can use a man directly or use a female that a man in power can be seduced by. Stop focusing on gender. Unless you're saying man is in like a human, don't focus on gender. Because you can have, okay, I'll use my own life. If you guys have read my blog post, Jezebel was my BFF. If you read the 2-part blog post series, How I Fell Prey to Jezebel, there was the girl I considered my best friend who had a spirit of Jezebel. Guess who was the Ahab in that scenario several years ago? Is me. I'm not a man. There was nothing but women in that group that I describe in that scenario. No men involved whatsoever. And, well, not that we hung around with all the time. So it's about a spirit of passivity. It's not about a gender. And if you get stuck on the gender, you will lose the revelation that Jezebel is no respecter of persons. You can have a Jezebel in a quote-unquote friendship or usership. You can have a spirit of Jezebel and Ahab operating in a family. Could be mother and father, could be wife and husband, could be husband and wife, could be child and parents, could be parent and child, could be mother-in-law and wife, mother-in-law and husband. It just depends on the scenario. You can have it in a work setting. It does not matter. It is not a respecter of gender. Now, when you're talking about a more intermediate spirit, yeah, it could do with power, and we see that more in the context of the interaction between Queen Jezebel, not to be confused with the spirit, Queen Jezebel and Elijah. That's why you see it again in Herodias and John the Baptist, who came in the spirit of Elijah. Let's see who else. David and Absalom. Absalom was a man with the spirit of Jezebel that manifestation was not classic. A classic Jezebel manifestation, aka like Queen Jezebel, is that caters primarily to female characteristics. Okay, there is a thin line between influence and manipulation. The Absalomic manifestation caters to masculine tendencies, and there is a thin line between dominion and domination and being domineering. Okay, so whatever your gender is, there's a manifestation that caters to you. And there's, again, several male variants of the spirit of Jezebel in the Bible. Okay, you could say Pharaoh a little bit. You could see the Pharisees are like a hybrid between Jezebel witchcraft and the religious spirit. Sometimes you really can't even tell the difference between Jezebel and the religious spirit, because here's the thing: Jezebel is a religious spirit. It doesn't only primarily function in religious settings, but it is a religious spirit. Herod the Great, who tried to kill Jesus; Pharaoh, who tried to kill Moses; Herodias; King Saul, who had issues with David; Saul before he became Paul; Balaam, like we talked about in length. So there's so many manifestations. So please don't get hung up on gender. So it is a seducing spirit, but it's so far beyond sex, because the mission of Jezebel is to seduce the Lord's followers into sexual immorality, into spiritual idolatry. So the real end game is idolatry, just as it is with the spirit of Balaam, which is the spirit of Jezebel, just with a different motivation. The motivation behind the spirit of Balaam, or the manifestation that looks like Balaam, is greed. It's monetary gain, material gain, be it money, be it material, be it acclaim, whatever. Okay, because when Balak sent princes and nobles to Balaam, he didn't listen. He sent them back because the Lord told him to send them back. So what did he do? He sent greater princes and more notable nobles with a bigger diviner's fee to seduce Balaam into cursing the children of Israel. But going back to Absalom and David, in that relationship, David was actually the Ahab. Okay, Absalom was the Jezebel. David was the Ahab. I've taught on that before. Y'all have heard me talk about that before. I won't do it again. Okay, so he was the whatever. So he was the anointed one. He was the Elijah when Saul was the Jezebel, but he became the Ahab when Absalom was the Jezebel. Okay, moving on. And as far as how the spirit operates, like its specific modus operandi, we've talked about the mission. The modus operandi changes. Everyone is not a high-level Jezebel. Everyone who has Jezebelic tendencies is not a Jezebel. There's a whole spectrum of demonization, okay? And I do not know how this works. I do not know if it's not just one spirit that's Jezebel. I believe there is one principality named Jezebel. So there's one prince named Jezebel, and I say that on purpose because the spirit is androgynous. The spirit behind the LGBTQ community is Jezebel. Okay, that's why it works so hand in hand with the feminist movement, which is backed by Jezebel. So that you have the prince Jezebel. But I believe just as there are little Christ, aka Christians, who come in the name of Jesus, I believe there are like foot soldiers, if you will, lesser spirits, just like there were lesser spirits that answered to Legion. We don't know their names, but we know that they were identified as Legion, for we are many, who I believe do the work and the will of Jezebel, as any military ruler, if you will, would have. But then it's also a mental factor, because when you're talking about an intermediate to especially a high level Jezebel, as far as I'm convinced, that person has a mental illness. You do not think and operate, you are not programmed like a normal human being at that point. Anyone who's dealt with a narcissist, anyone who's dealt with a sociopath, that is not a normal human being. That is not a normal human being way of thinking. It is a demon. Those are psychological terms for a spirit. Those are just manifestations of the spirit of Jezebel. So I don't know if it's like a spirit that like screws up your mental programming and then moves on to the next person. Like, I don't know. From my personal assessment, I believe, and this is not just me, this is other ministers, well-known ministers that you all respect. I don't think there's anything as far as how it affects the human brain that is as powerful as the spirit of Jezebel and the spirit of homosexuality, or just that kind of sexual perversion, anything on that spectrum. Because everyone needs to have their mind renewed by Christ. Everyone needs to put on the mind of Christ. Everyone needs to be transformed by the renewing of their mind. We all agree. Amen. We have to go through the cross and be crucified and have our souls sanctified. All of us. But it takes so much more work when you are someone who's a high level Jezebel or someone who's been in that LGBT lifestyle. It is not impossible, because my Bible says every knee must bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is the Lord. I don't care who you are. I don't care what demon you are. I don't care if you're the spirit of Behemoth, Leviathan, Jezebel, Babylon. It doesn't matter. You have to bow. Sooner or later, now or then. I don't care. You will bow. Absolutely, because you are not more powerful. We're not glorifying the enemy. There is nothing more powerful than the name and the person of Jesus. When I come in the name of Jesus, I am more powerful than any principality, because I am seated in Christ in heavenly places at the right hand of the Father, above every principality, above every power, above every spirit of the age, and above every host of wickedness. I'm up here in the third heaven, you down here in the firmament, okay? And you're definitely above every demon on the earth, okay? So there are levels, there are castes, but Jesus is up here. Everything else is somewhere below. So if you operate from here, you operate from a place of victory. If you operate down here, you can be encumbered and wearied and distracted and frustrated. Okay, let's see what other questions. I hope I answered that. We also said, yes, in the book of Enoch, it describes how the Nephilim taught men how to make weapons, and that's in the Bible. You can infer it. I won't read it. Just read Genesis 4. Tubal Cain was the one who introduced metalworking, metalsmithing, so blacksmithing, silversmithing, coppersmithing, all the smithing that takes place that we learn about throughout history: bronze, copper, iron, metal. That's what blacksmithing is. You're dealing with iron and things like that. Tubal Cain was the one who came up with that, or was inspired to come up with that. And then obviously if you create metal, it's not a far cry to think, oh, you might have created weapons. There you have it. We only see inventions at this point of the Bible from the line of Cain. Cain was the first city builder. He was so impressed by the birth of his son Enoch, not the one who walked with God in Genesis 5. Okay, a different Enoch. He was so impressed with the birth of his firstborn son, he built a city, but also he built a city because the ground would not yield for him. If the ground will not yield, I can only do the nomadic lifestyle for so long without it just being ridiculous. I have a family to support, so what am I going to do? I'm going to use my demonic intellect, and it's not even, cities aren't bad. Okay, let's just be clear, use balance. I'm going to use my human intellect. Okay, because we are made in the image and likeness of God, even if we're wicked. They built the city of Shinar, or they built the city of Babel in the plain of Shinar, and God said nothing would be impossible to them. That's how powerful they were, being outside of the will of God. Okay, so outside of the will of God, Cain still has all this intellect. The glory of God from the Garden of Eden is still in his veins because he's still living for 800 or 900 years. Okay, he's intelligent. He builds a city, and creates commerce. A son of Seth did not do that. Abel did not do that. Adam did not do that. Cain, who was of the evil one, either Peter or Jude tells us, he built the very first city. Again, cities are not bad, but the first cities you see in Scripture are bad. Okay? Multitude of people, multitude of wickedness. Unless it's... you can be in one accord like the Babylonians were, okay, in a spirit of witchcraft, or you can be on one accord like they were in the upper room on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. So pick your poison. Pick the blessing or pick the poison, okay? Because it's so funny, because in both cases God divided the languages, y'all. Oh my God, Revelation, boom, mind blown emoji, okay? God divided the languages both times they were on one accord. The first time it was to say, y'all getting on my nerves, okay? Y'all can't do this. I'm breaking up your spirit of witchcraft, because wherever you're in unity, there's a spirit. But then what happens? It's like he divided and unified their language at the same time on the day of Pentecost. Because what did they do? They spoke in different languages, because all the men who were outside the upper room heard the praises and the glory of God in their native language, y'all. Crazy, okay? But at the same time, it unified the people. It unified, it added to the body, and people were added to the body daily. A couple hours later, people added to the body daily. Next day, people added to the body daily. Okay, so there was diversity to reach out to the diverse peoples and bring them back and put together what was jacked up in Genesis 11. Yeah, I love this stuff. I love it. Okay, let's see. Book of Enoch, it describes how the Nephilim taught man how to make weapons, discover diamonds, precious metals, jewelry, and search was formed. So here's the thing. It's not even that what they came up with was evil. Because when you read, let's go back to the monster, Old Testament. When you read Genesis 4, okay, when you read about the sons of Lamech, it says, okay, verse 19, Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, the name of the other was Zillah. Verse 20, Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such that have cattle. So you see nomadic cattle rearing. Cowboys. Okay, maybe not cowboys, okay. But you see nomadic agriculture created here, okay. That's not wicked, is it? Nope, sure not, okay. Next verse, 21. And his brother's name was Jubal. So you have Jabal, who's the father of those who dwell in tents and those who deal with cattle. And you have his whole brother Jubal, who is the father of all such as handle the harp and the organ. So music is created. Music did not exist, at least not on instruments before this point. Maybe this is where the Church of Christ get it from. I don't know. Okay. Verse 22. And Zillah, the other wife, she also bare Tubal Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, all the metals. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. Okay. And of course, earlier in this chapter, we see Cain builds the very first city. He creates commerce because I can't grow food. The ground will not yield for me. The same curse, basically, that was put on my father Adam for sinning in the Garden of Eden has been upgraded and put on me for committing the first murder / fratricide post-Eden. Okay? So whereas the ground, it would be difficult for the ground to yield for my father Adam, by the sweat of my brow will I get the fruit of the earth. There'll be thorns and thistles you have to deal with. Now the ground is just like, screw you, okay? I'm not yielding for you. I'll deal with your daddy, but I ain't dealing with you. So whatever he did, he could no longer produce food. I don't know if he planted seeds and maybe they started to come up and then a blight or plague hit it. I don't know if he planted food and then the locust came and devoured it. I don't know if the soil was bad and just nothing would be yielded. Whatever happened, there was no fruit of the earth that would work out for him. So he said, I have to feed my family. I got to feed myself. You can only steal and thieve for so long from people, especially if you are running away from people because they want to kill you because you killed your brother, who is their brother or their daddy or their uncle or their son. Okay? So you run. So the vagabondism is not a curse. It is a natural effect of the ground no longer yielding. Okay? That's all I'll say, okay? It's a natural effect because you can't be a vagabond and live in a city. Build a city. You can be homeless in a city, but you can't be a vagabond and build a city and create commerce. And obviously scripture does not say Cain created commerce, but you can infer that because what do you do in a city? What do you do when people come together? You trade. Okay, so he created very likely the bartering system. I don't think he created currency because I don't think currency came along just yet. But he created the bartering system that would eventually one day produce a monetary currency system in commerce in that regard. So he was a pioneer. He was a forerunner. Okay, he was only cursed in one area of his life. The ground will not yield. Doesn't mean Jesus didn't say that all of the work of your hand is going to be cursed. It says the ground will not yield for you. So even cursed by God in one area, he still flourished. What can you do with the grace of God on your life? Let's see what else. Jacoby, you said until recently, the last few hundred years, marriage has been more so about alliances, even among commoners. Within the past few hundred years, did it shift? Only within the past few hundred years did it shift primarily to romantic motivations. Absolutely. You may have mentioned it, but if I'm not mistaken, Sumerian culture talks about these events. Probably, it's the cradle, near the cradle of civilization. Here's my thing. I don't think civilization was born in Africa. Hear me out. I think it was born in that 1040 window, which does include Africa, but in the Middle East, not on the continent of Africa. But then again, all the world was one. It was Pangea. The world didn't break up until after the Tower of Babylon. Well, multiple generations after the flood, okay? So I believe it was the same peoples who eventually fathered Africa, if you will. But I don't believe the cradle itself, because they had to disperse and leave Babel. So I believe Sumerian culture and those Sumerian, Mesopotamian, whatever, that culture is older. I believe that's what scripture shows us. Sue me. Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Kunta. God ain't ashy. I love it. You said no seriousness. Mama was probably feeding the snake sacrifice babies. Ain't no telling. I don't know. I don't want to know. I just know Mama got saved, delivered, and sanctified. Shanda da Bosa. Okay. Jacoby, definitely quotable. There's a thin line between influence and manipulation. There's a thin line between dominion and domineering. Quote me with attribution. Thin line between love and hate. Okay. I stopped in the middle of your comment. I'm sorry, Larry. Y'all know I'd be doing that, running off on tangents. Because the thing is, you might know what you were saying, but someone else who's hearing this might not take time to read the comments and might need to hear what is actually going into that. Okay. Let's see. If you have any more questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. Start typing. I never think you're here to argue, Larry. You're extremely supportive. Okay. Jacoby, you agree that civilization wasn't born in Africa. I was meaning that Sumerian... I wasn't trying to say you think that. I just was throwing that out there. I was meaning that the Sumerian records talk about interacting with the fallen called the Anunnaki. Absolutely. I love all this nerdy stuff. Yes, I sit up and watch Ancient Aliens and all the alien stuff. I love it because the alien ain't nothing but a fallen angel in a mask. What's that mean? I don't have like a weird short haircut, so it doesn't flip properly, but I'm so crazy. Any more questions or comments? You know, they think Aminakin, or Aminat, I can't talk, I'm tongue-tied. Akhenaten of the Aten was a Nephilim or an alien, aka fallen angel, and that would have made King Tut one, two. They think his wife Nefertiti was perhaps the Nephilim too, because of the weird shape. I still have to watch the fourth kind. I haven't watched it yet. Bear with me. Y'all been telling me to watch it forever. One of these days. Yeah, but it's fascinating because he shifted the whole landscape of worship, which is why they killed him, which is why they killed his son Tut down the line. Shifted the whole balance of power from the priests who were polytheistic and instituted monotheism, which is fascinating. Obviously not the worship of Jehovah, but the worship of one God, who is probably Baal or something like that. But yeah, fascinating stuff. Every ancient culture tells a story of some being coming down from the heavens and intermingling with humans and creating interesting peoples. Did Nephilim build the pyramids? I believe the pyramids were built with fallen technology. So, either they daddies or they themselves were involved, because it was not the Hebrew slaves. They built, Cecil B. DeMille, who directed the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner, he was very accurate. Like, so accurate. I grew up hearing that the adoptive mother of Moses was Bithiah, and as a teen and an adult, I was like, is that really Moses' adopted mama name? But there it was in the Bible. Bithiah, who left with the Hebrews and married a Hebrew man and had 3 more kids. Suddenly the Lord opened her womb because he closed it so she could be Moses' adopted mother. That's her name. She's in the Bible. So his father would read a chapter from the Bible and a chapter from history every night to him and his brother before they went to sleep. And so that's why he's so historically accurate in what he did. So it shows the Hebrew slaves building like the temple granaries and things like that, like some tribute city or something like that. It's definitely not the pyramids, because the pyramids were built well before that, well before Abraham existed. Like, well, maybe not well before, but before. Okay. So definitely fallen technology. It's a fallen structure, aka a sacred structure. Sacred, obviously, to the pagans, not to us. And I cover this whole subject in the Days of Noah teleseminar. I'm very heavy on the sacred structures and the sacred sciences. Pythagoras studied with the Egyptian priests. His stuff wasn't Greek. He started a whole cult. Influenced by what the Egyptians taught him, because they taught the sacred sciences that built these sacred structures, that a lot of which are the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Stonehenge, all the hinges. What else? Tower of Babel, I'm sure. The pyramids. Everybody in the ancient world built some form of pyramid. Even the Native Americans had mounds. The Mayans had Aztecs. Had pyramids. Y'all forgive me, it's late. And I'm still hungry. I didn't eat after that first life. So when you see the same pattern, the same imprint in every ancient culture, they got it from somewhere. Okay? We're the primitive ones because we're the ones, I mean, as believers, I'm saying as humans, not as believers. Okay? As believers, we're like this, or have the opportunity to be like this with the Father and with the Holy Spirit of God, who is the only wise God. Okay, who is the Spirit of truth, the Spirit of wisdom, if you will, who can teach us all things and does. But as human beings, we are so far removed from the wisdom of the ancients, whether that be heavenly or fallen, heavenly or demonic. We are so far removed from what our human forefathers knew. And this is not a biblical cycle, but I believe it is a biblical concept. But I believe it is actually the pattern shows up in scripture, so I can't even say that. But I'll say it has been corrupted and explained and sort of hijacked by pagans. But this idea of the cycle of the yugas, the ancient world, the Hindus, the Greeks, the Romans, just the Egyptians, I'm sure, all the ancient cultures of the world, throwing the Asians too, have this idea that humanity goes through cycles within cycles, which is actually what the Mayan calendar depicts, as far as like days and months and yugos and all that stuff. And again, all of this is in my Days of Noah teleseminar on my website. If somebody type DesireeMMondesir.com in the comments, because I can't type on here, please. And if you click on the buy the book thing on my website, it'll take you straight to the bookstore, so you can see all my resources there. But there is this cycle of humanity that simply states humanity starts in the golden age. Okay, you start off in oneness with God or the gods, which we see in the Garden of Eden. Okay, something happens, whatever happens, and we start to distance. There's a distance that becomes created. Now, we know that distance was sin, the introduction of sin to humanity. So the silver era is commenced. The silver era is extremely important, the silver age, I should say, because the silver age still possesses most of the wisdom of the ancients. And you have to understand that in Eden, we had the full faculties of our brain. So there are different theories that I've frankly discussed, or personally discussed, I should say, as to potentially how our brains have become so dumbed down to what we use, the 10 to 20% we use today. And it's possible, I think it's most plausible, that when humanity was put out of the Garden of Eden, when death entered our bloodline, at the same time, our human knowledge and capacity for knowledge began to die as well, in conjunction with our bodies dying. So the glory of God is still in the veins of the ancients, because they're living for almost 1,000 years. And men live shorter than women, so imagine how long the women were living. Just saying. Okay. So they're living for I want to say Adam lived for like 950 years, something like that. He was up there. Methuselah, oldest living man, 969 years. Noah, a lot of them, they lived for a long time. Not Abel, because obviously he was killed, but a lot of them, again, read that in Genesis chapter 5 for the genealogies there. There is a purpose to the genealogies. Thank you, Jacoby. And so the glory is still in their veins. The glory is still giving them access to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They still have that capacity to know things even before the angels came down to teach men righteousness and were corrupted and started teaching them black arts. So the silver era says we're losing something. There's something we're missing. So before we completely lose it, let's start to create these structures that point to it. Let's start to create these sciences and these practices and these arts to maintain what we used to have through our oneness with God, aka the gods, whatever they thought they were. Okay, so that's the silver era. So the silver era is whereas the golden era is highlighted by harmony, perfect harmony with God and man. Okay, the silver era is highlighted, or the silver age is highlighted by sacred structures and sacred sciences. This is where you have the pyramids. This is where you have the tower, aka the pyramid of Babel. It is my belief that pyramids are nothing but man-made mountains. I will not get into that tonight, although it is in my Days of Noah teleseminar. Okay, there is such strong symbolism for mountains in Scripture, and since false religion is nothing but man's attempt to reach God, and mountains are all about reaching God. Where did Moses go? Where did Elijah go? What happened to Jesus when he went on the mountain? He was transfigured. He was bodily, completely transfigured. Moses' face was transfigured. Where did they have visitations with God? All of these different fascinating things. Where is the pinnacle of the society? It's being drawn to the mountain of the Lord. Just all of these different factors. I will not go into them. I really need to finish reworking my article so I can submit it to some journal somewhere, okay, and not make it so churchy. But so I believe pyramids are man-made mountains. I believe that was the purpose of the Tower of Babel, aka the Pyramid of Babel. So the Silver Age is highlighted by the sacred structures created by the sacred sciences that we know to be fallen technology and fallen structures, because ain't none of them holy. Ain't not a single one of them holy. Okay, a lot of the use was for interacting with the gods. The pyramids were not for burial. The queen's chamber was not where a queen was buried. The queen's chamber was like a power room, an energy room. The pyramids produced energy. Okay, I'm not doing that with y'all. I'm not going there tonight. Moving on. Then you have the Bronze Era. The Greeks divide this into the Bronze Era and the Age of the Hero, whatever. So this is where it's really highlighted by what's bronze in the ancient world. Weapons. It's highlighted by weaponry and violence and wars and things like that, because what are humans going to do when they're left to themselves? We gonna fight, because we're just ridiculous, okay? We just don't learn. So they're going further and further from the light, further and further from the oneness and the harmony with God and man. And so now they're in the Bronze Age, okay? Then after the Bronze Age comes the final age of the Iron Age, aka the Dark Age, which is just trash, okay? So when the world was supposed to end, December, was it 12th or 21st, one of those, in 2012, the Mayans weren't saying the world was going to end. Their calendar was saying it is the end of a cycle from gold to silver to bronze to iron. Because what happens when you end the Iron Age? You come out of the Iron Age into the new Bronze Age. So we are in the Bronze Age. Wars, rumors of wars. Did not Jesus say that in Matthew 24? Did he not? Okay, we're surrounded every day with threat of war and rumors of wars. Okay, and then eventually you're going into the Silver Era, the new Silver Era. I believe the new Silver Age will be the millennial reign. That's me. The timeline is a little bit different because with all the astrological occurrences and disruptions and tribulation, all that insanity, things are going to be a little thrown off. Obviously, the stars in the heavens, I'm not saying this from an astrological standpoint, but from an astronomical standpoint, they do affect the times and the seasons, obviously. Okay, so timeline is being messed with. We can hasten the day of the Lord, which means if you can hasten the day of the coming of the Lord, that means you can stretch things out a little bit too through our disobedience. So there are different things that are happening, different reasons that factor for the shortening of time. Okay, then you get to the silver era, which is the millennial reign of Christ after the tribulation. Okay, I'm still not an end time person. I still don't understand all of this. Just go to Perry Stone, although he's not going to tell you about these yugas. I know that much. Okay, and after the silver era of the millennial reign, then you have the new golden age, which, thank God, and I believe is the final resting place of humanity to those who belong to God, to those who are in the new heaven and the new earth. And I'm going to read something very fascinating to you that will point back to the pyramids. Perry Stone said, okay, so in my teleseminar, The Days of Noah, I do have a timeline that casts sort of, if you will, my version of the timeline of humanity, because we don't know the exact age of the earth. We don't know that. It's millions upon billions of years old, regardless of what your hardcore, die-hard creationist Ken Ham and so forth tell you. And I ain't mad at Ken Ham. I want to go see the Ark, okay? But what the Bible tells us is that time as we know it starts when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden. We don't know how long they were in the garden. We don't even know if they had kids in the garden. Okay, we don't know anything. And then if you believe in the gap theory, the earth is much, much, much older. I believe that factors in a lot of what science is telling us from a proof and evidence standpoint, and what certain people find hard to believe, so they just say it doesn't exist and it's not true. Okay, does not negate the authority of Scripture. You can see it in Scripture. Okay, so I have the timeline of humanity broken down according to the supposed, I'll say, the eras presented by the cycle of yugas, if you will. And then I have a little parallel map of the empires represented by Daniel's statue in Daniel 2. So just those 4 or 5, whatever, 6, however many empires, let's see, gold, silver, bronze, iron and clay. So 5, represented by those 5 empires. And then you have 6 when you include the rock that destroys the whole statue, and takes over and is the kingdom of God. A mountain of God, Shondo. So I have that in there as well, paralleled with the whole length of human civilization. Because while the earth may be millions and billions of years old, we have not been around for that long. We just haven't, okay? Although we still don't know, it has definitely not been that long. We know that much. What was I going to look up, y'all? Okay. Revelation 22. And I think I'm going to end on this note unless y'all have any more questions. So speak now or forever hold your peace. Almost. Where do I want to go for this? Do I want to pull out my old Bible? It might be 21. Okay, it's 21. Verse. Okay, this is talking about this city, the new Jerusalem on the new earth with the new heaven. Okay, so verse 22, and I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. Okay, pause. I don't know how many of y'all are like super nerdy like me and watch The Pyramid Code, which used to be on Netflix, which they took off, and I'm horrified. I hope they bring it back or either put it on Hulu or something, Disney Plus or something that I have access to. But they talk about how one of the purposes of the pyramids was to generate energy. They say, I've never been to Egypt, but if you go into the Great Pyramid, now you can sort of feel the charge, the energy, if you're in the pyramid in this modern day. But one of the scholars reflected that they believe at its pinnacle, you would have been able to feel the power, or even perhaps see, I don't know, the energy created by that pyramid around the world in its prime. Okay? This is the all broke down version where you feel the energy today. But at its prime, you could have felt the energy, the electricity, and they were even built with very specific materials to conduct or not conduct or whatever energy. The Queen's chamber was for conducting energy. It wasn't for burial. And you can look this stuff up. It's there on the internet. And I know that's not something you should say about everything, but just look into it yourself, judge for yourself, whatever. So I find this fascinating. Perry Stone said there were some boys who I don't know if they were praying or something, and all three of them, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established, saw a vision of the new heaven, of the new Jerusalem descending out of the heavens. It was in the shape of a pyramid. Because what is the base of a pyramid? It's a square. So it does not override scripture, which says that there's a square base. Okay? What is Jerusalem now? A mountain. The mountain of God. Where did Jesus leave? On a mountain. Where is Jesus coming back? On a mountain. So the new city is a pyramid / mountain. And who is the light? The energy source, because there's no sun and no moon. We don't need it because he is the light of the world. Oh my God. Okay. And then one of the purposes of mountains is to set, culture. When you listen to Bishop Tudor Bismarck, he would say that Lucifer, who worked, his occupation was on the mountain of God. We always just write him down to being a praise and worship leader, and he may have been that, but he says he was the minister of what? Culture. Culture. And you see that throughout scripture. Why? Because he's the God of this world. He controls the systems that govern this world. When he tempted Jesus, he took him not onto but into a high mountain, King James Version says, and showed him what? All of the kingdoms of the world. It deals with culture. It deals with systems. It deals with structures and the ordering and the running of the world. Okay? But in this case, it ain't Lucifer on the mountain. It's God. Okay? So in verse 24, it says, and the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it, and the gates of it shall not be shut all day, for there shall be no night there, and they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it, and there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life. Shondo, my name is written, is yours. Fascinating. I love this stuff. Any questions before we go? I don't even have the slightest clue what time it is. It's probably well after 3 a.m. Y'all pray for me. I am a night owl, but I am hungry, and I am craving some HGTV, y'all. Any questions or comments before we go? I heard that the pyramids were some kind of prophetic replication of New Jerusalem. Where did you hear that, Jacoby? I'd love to hear more about that from a divine spiritual standpoint. But yes, what else about pyramids? Culture, mountains of society. Okay. Where does the whore of Babylon sit? She sits on the 7-headed beast, which represents 7 mountains And yes, Rome is on 7 hills / mountains, but I believe those are the mountains of culture, the mountains of influence. 3:31. Got a couple more minutes, y'all. I'll go till 3:35. And so she's not supposed to sit on a mountain. The Nephilim are not supposed to run the mountain, Caleb. You're supposed to take the mountain, and you are well able. The whore of Babylon is not supposed to be seated on the mountains. We are supposed to be seated on the mountains. The kingdoms of the world are supposed to become the kingdoms of our Lord and of our Christ. Mountains represent kingdoms. Okay? Again, the image in Daniel chapter 2 of the statue that he saw in the vision, and in the rock, being cut out of a mountain or becoming a mountain, something like that, in destroying the earthly empires, because there is nothing that can touch the kingdom of God on this earth. So we see that begin to be established bodily in the millennial reign, aka the new silver age. And then we see that solidified with the new heaven and the new earth, in the new Jerusalem, in the final golden age, which means we're gonna be back down here, y'all. We weren't made for heaven. We gonna visit. We're gonna have a nice wedding feast and get married to our maker, who is our husband. And then we're gonna come back here. We're going to come back here because we were made for the earth, to be his image in the earth. Now, it will be a golden era because there will be unbroken communication with the Most High God. We won't need a sun. We won't need a moon, because he is the light. He will be here with us as he is there. I don't understand all of it. I don't understand all of it. But I'm excited. So, any other questions before we go, y'all? Anything at all? Now, this is not a requirement at all. This was all free, but if y'all feel like being a blessing, I'm going to drop my CashApp and PayPal in the comments, if you so choose. You're blessed if you give, you're blessed if you don't. I mean, I don't want to say I don't care, I do care, but it doesn't matter to me. It's like, if you want to give, give. If you don't want to give, don't. Be blessed. In the city and in the field. In your coming and in your going. When you're weeping and rejoicing. He is for you. I love that song. Giving it about another minute. My stomach is growling. Anything at all? Oakley dokley saints. Hopefully you guys will take advantage of those resources on my website. I have like 15 books, 3 teleseminars, and of course the blog itself. I have well over 250 blog posts. So yeah, and YouTube. There are videos on YouTube, Periscope, and Instagram, and of course my official Facebook page is at DesireeMMondesir. Twitter, just DesireeMMondesir, no middle initial. Hit me up, y'all. Follow, connect. Follow me as I follow Jesus. If I don't follow Jesus, God absolutely forbid, don't follow me no more. Okay. What I say unto one, I say unto all. No, I'm joking. Y'all have a good night. I'm hungry, and I love y'all. Okay, bye-bye.